Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I request you to kindly occupy the front row seats, some of you. Good morning, sir, and Jai Hind. May I have your permission to start, sir? Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a matter of great honor and a privilege for me to welcome you all on behalf of the DG USI, Major General B.K. Sharma, AV. From the highest level, that is at the service headquarters level, to a div and a battalion at that time. So you have all the three levels represented here by panelists who have taken part in this conflict. What they achieved has remained etched in the annals of our rich military history and has served as an inspiration for the others to emulate. I also take this opportunity to thank the SBI for their sponsorship as well as the BSES. May I now request the DG USI, Major General B.K. Sharma, AVSM SM Bar, to kindly give out the welcome address.
General Malik sir, esteemed panelists, council members, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of USI Council, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you, those who are physically present here and those who are digitally connected for this very, very important event, and that is reflections on Kargil War after 25 years of our grand victory. Now, I'm happy to inform you that USI has embarked upon a series of initiatives to preserve and promote India's military heritage. We have a digital archive project wherein we are uh, digitally capturing, cataloging, and there's a retrieval system for all the battlefield history records of Indian Army we've already done. And one more project from the Air Force side is in the pipeline. And we've also reached out to Assam Rifles and other paramilitary forces and Central Armed Police Forces. We also been assigned a Gallantry Award project by Ministry of Defense, wherein we are bringing into the collective consciousness of our countrymen the sagas of valor and sacrifice made by our heroes. And we're running a digital portal, or what you call is a virtual museum. Besides that, we have this Udbhav project, which is instituted by Indian Army to study the ancient scriptures and convert them into a modern strategic vocabulary, besides our annual military heritage festival and also military heritage tourism. We also, from last year onwards, started a series of battle accounts narrated by our war veterans, like we did Battle of Hajipir last year, and then we did Battle of Tangel airdrop, including the ground link-up. And this year we did, Meghna heli bridge operations, as also Sylhet heliborne operations. And now this important event today. Now we know that post-independence, Kargil War is the second most consequential war after 1971, fought by India with profound geopolitical and military lessons. The war caused Pakistan a humiliating defeat for its flawed assumptions and misplaced hubris and miscalculation vis-a-vis India's politico-military resolve and fierce response to its misadventure in Kargil. India not only called Pakistan's nuclear bluff, but laid bare lies of its military leadership to their own people and international community. Pakistan's humiliating defeat deepened the chasm between the political authorities and military leadership, which led to the coup, thus plunging Pakistan into a deep and irreversible crisis. Undoubtedly, the initial surprise achieved by Pakistan reflected poorly on our ISR capabilities and propensity to be marred by mental maps and group thinking. This will never happen again syndrome to a curious what if question is still begs an answer or haunts us. Now, the war also demonstrated that operational hollowness, if permitted to grow, can cause military leadership undue stress in prosecuting a military campaign. And we recall General Malik's statement, we will fight with whatever we have. It brought out the necessity of having insightful discussions on threat perception within the three services and with National Command Authority, as well as the nuanced understanding of escalation, domination, control, and role of each service at different stages of the campaign. It threw up pertinent lessons in having a whole of government approach, a nation approach to a military campaign, thus ensuring synergy in the instruments of national power. It also brought out the importance of regular interaction between military leadership and the Prime Minister, circumventing the red tapeism. Media emerged as a force multiplier in galvanizing national mood and injecting a patriotic fervor. And we also saw the hallmark of proactive and deft diplomacy in garnering international support. All the war exhibited nations, and particularly Indian militaries, what you call is the great resilience, resolve, determination, and aggressive spirit displayed by all ranks to fight last man, last round for every inch of own territory. And it reflected or it showed the highest form of leadership and regimentation at unit level. We also saw, since we were, it was a kind of a crisis management kind of a situation, how the military started innovating, adapting, and exhibiting great degree of resourcefulness. It brought Indian military a great degree of respect because we showed a lot of respect for international humanitarian law and military ethos. And of course, as the war progressed and we were able to get handle of the situation, then this jointmanship, it automatically developed as we saw that Operation Safed Sagar, in which Air Force played a very important role in Operation Talwar. These had a cumulative effect in causing the politico-military paralysis of Pakistan's National Command Authority. Then there was also an awakening that we need to carry out an honest appraisal of what went wrong. And that is why military did institute some kind of an inquiry or a sort of a appraisal of the whole campaign. And there was also a Kargil Review Committee and group of ministers report, which came out with far-reaching recommendations. But on the flip side, well, when the fervor of the war petered out, there was a little bit of a dampener in regard to implementation of some of those recommendations, and certain half-baked reforms were carried out. Uh, Inadequate measures were instituted to enhance our ISR capabilities and address asymmetries, glaring asymmetries in the military balance that we have vis-a-vis Pakistan and China. It also demonstrated inadequacy in our understanding China's intent, capabilities, and strategic behavior, as we saw in another embarrassment, so to say, from which we recovered, and that is in 2020, when China asserted a 1959 claim line. Therefore, time has now come, with the hindsight knowledge of Kargil War, that we need to seriously reflect that what could be another strategic surprise by China, this time particularly demonstrating its competitive advantage in niche and disruptive technology. Pakistan's capacity to escalate new forms of cross-border terrorism, we've seen lessons from Gaza, right? And heightened violence at the LOC with China's heightened aggression at the line of actual control. And there are other strategic imperatives which we need to reflect upon. That is to develop and articulate doctrinal thought on hybrid warfare, acceleration to the process of theaterization, development and embracement of niche and disruptive technology in our over strategic calculus and in our deterrence at all levels, and also certain deliverables when we talk about we want to adopt a punitive deterrence against Pakistan and a denial by deterrence against China. What does it actually mean and what are the kind of capabilities we need? And finally, I think we need to really understand what does this whole of government and whole of nation approach involve, because we still tend to work in silos and there is a lot of networking and integration and synergy required. And above all, we know that today we are in a social media age. I think strategic communication to build up a narrative and to propagate a plausible narrative still remains a weakness with us. We need to sort of give a little more thought to this. So without further ado, I now request General Ved Malik, who's been, I would say, the main architect of Kargil victory, to please share his thoughts on the war. Thank you, sir.
Good morning and Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to join the Director General and members of the USI in whatever program that they have. They're always very informative, very educative. And so thank you, BK, for inviting me to this panel discussion. And I will be speaking mostly on strategic issues only, as we saw things from Delhi, South Block, and North Block also. But the fact is, and I always say that the real battles were fought by people who are sitting here, all the heroes who are sitting here, and of course the men who were there on the ground. And I always say that planning is good, but what matters really is the implementation, execution on the ground. That is what wins the battles. And then when you win the battle, they win the war also. I'm going to touch upon three aspects only. First, of course, is how did Pakistan Army achieve surprise and we failed to notice. Um can you keep this low at the moment? This slide? I'll come to that.
Slide at the moment, Gaurav.
ये बाद में दिखा देना. How did Pakistan Army achieve surprise and we failed to notice or assess that? Briefly, I'll touch on that. Second, of course, what was our joint military strategy? And I'm not talking of Army, Navy, and Air Force. The three chiefs were together. And lastly, some important strategic lessons. Some have been already brought out by General Sharma, but I'll add a few from my side also. Firstly, Pakistan surprise and deception measures. What, incidentally, I must tell you, the frontage of that war was from Kabul Gali, which is close to Zojila, you can say it, on the line of control, to Turtuk. That was a frontage which comes to about 160 kilometers. बाद में कर लेंगे उसको. Pakistani plan based on stealth and deception was kept a very closely guarded secret amongst select military commanders, and others were informed on the need to know basis. This has been brought out by Pakistani journalists as well as generals themselves. There is no doubt about it. And those who were told about it, that too at the last moment. In the beginning, their troops which came to Batalik sector or even to Tololing and all, they came in the garb of jihadis, working, wearing black salwar and kameez. As a deception measure, deliberate radio transmission in Balti and Pashto languages were made to convey an impression that only jihadis had intruded across the line of control. In fact, I think this was where we were made fool of, because all our agencies were talking about these radio interceptions and basing their assessment on that for a very long time. This was also the official line adopted by the Pakistani military. Whenever our DGMO, mind you, we kept that communication open every Tuesday. The DGMOs used to speak to each other. The other Pakistani chap, Tawqir Zia, I think his name was, he kept on insisting, हमको तो मालूम नहीं है, ये तो आपको मालूम होना चाहिए कि कौन लोग हैं, you know, till the end. Of course, toward the end, he came to. In actual fact, there were no jihadis on the scene throughout the war. I feel sad even now when some people talk about intruders, jihadis, mujahideen and all. There were absolutely none of them. They were all Pakistani army people. Northern Light Infantry battalions and their formation headquarters were already located in the northern area, and Pakistani did not need, and these people did not need acclimatization. And also they had good knowledge of the terrain because they were from that area. Pakistani army chose late winter season to carry out initial reconnaissance of the operational area and establish firm bases. All this happened after Pervez Musharraf took over as the army chief. and he was number 3 when he was appointed by the Prime Minister. That was in the first week of October 1998. Bulk of the troops infiltrated in small groups when the snow began to thaw in the upper reaches. Gilgit-Baltistan area, those days it was called Northern area, it was placed under army rule to deny access to the media and to facilitate optimal exploitation of local resources. I now come to surveillance. I think we did fail, no doubt about it. There were large gaps between our posts. From Kabul Gully to the next post on the line of control was about, I think, 40 kilometers. And then the smallest gap were about 8 or 9 kilometers. Now, these posts that we had established, part of 121 Brigade, they were only looking after the main avenues which we thought will be used by Pakistanis to launch any attack. And obviously, that was a large-scale attack. But Pakistani did not use that. They used a different methodology of infiltration, which the jihadis had been using for a long time in Kashmir. Recently, a journalist who, and also we must remember that we did not have the kind of gadgetry that exists today. Today, you have got satellite imagery. Today, you got drones. You got radars. You got, we did not even have night vision devices, all that. But I'll accept the fact that our patrolling was not as it should have been. There were flaws which came out. And to some extent, I think 15 Corps was more focused on the activities in the valley and did not pay much attention to this part on the other side. Recently, a journalist who usually carries a chip on the shoulder where the military is concerned wrote a misleading article in the digital media. I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. And he said that the intelligence agencies had been given information about jihadis, and he hasn't spoken well of the military leadership deliberately. Because they had been giving us information since 1998, and he quotes a letter from the Director IB of 2nd June 1998, which was sent to the other agencies, to PMO and including the Army headquarters, etc. I responded to that, and I brought out the following facts. Firstly, the war in Kargil in 1999 was February 2003. Now you can put that slide, first one. First slide. Okay. And okay, yeah. Okay. Now, a US delegation has visited Skadu area, Gilgit or Skadu area, in January 2003. And then the commander FCNA, when he was questioned, he said there were no jihadis at all in Kargil War.
Yes,
And mind you, I have got the minutes of that particular briefing with me. So anybody who wants to see that, I can show it that also, as recorded by the Americans during. And he categorically said that there were no jihadis at all. Musharraf planned, initiated the war after he took over in October 98. How could Pakistan military action in Kargil be foreseen by IB 6 months before it was conceived and initiated? This is a reply, I have response that I have given to Praveen Swami. Before it was conceived and initiated. If the signs were so evident, then why did Raw and IB stop Prime Minister Vajpayee from going to Lahore in February 99? The committee, I'm now quoting Kargil Review Committee, which has mentioned, the committee had overwhelming evidence that the Pakistani armed intrusion in the Kargil sector came as a complete and total surprise to the Indian government, army and intelligence agencies, as well as to the J&K government and its agencies. I'm quoting it from the Kargil Committee Review report, Kargil Review Committee report. There was no agency, individual who had been able to realize before the event the possibility of such a large-scale Pakistani intrusion. It's difficult. I am sorry, I'm not able to. Anyway, I'll just carry on without that. Can't I roll it down from here?
Yes.
How?
Yeah.
Okay.
Up and down. Next button.
नहीं आ रहा ना? What did you do? Okay. There is a book written by Mr. Jarnail Singh. He was Joint Secretary in the PMO. And in his book, he has written what I am quoting from that book. A week after the Kargil War, Principal Secretary Brijesh Mishra asked me to check all raw reports sent to PMO and see if there was any mention of likely intrusion into Kargil. I checked all reports from January 1999 onwards, especially the raw reports. Surprisingly, there was no information of intrusion either before or after in the reports. A few days later, the Principal Secretary again asked me about a specific dated report. That is 2nd June report that is meant. I checked that report and informed him that there was nothing in it about intrusion. By this time, it became clear that the RAW had failed in its duty to provide any information about Kargil intrusion. Now, this I'm quoting it from his book, With Four Prime Minister, My PMO Journey. Now I come to so I thought I'll mention about our surveillance and our intelligence. I now come to our military strategy. By the third week of May 1999, we were certain that Pakistan Army had was fully involved in the intrusion, but we did not have authentic evidence to indicate the extent of their involvement. And this point was discussed a few times in the Cabinet Committee on Security. And there I was insisting that, look, as far as we are concerned, these are all. The intruders conducted themselves as well as they were well-trained army personnel, and their count kept increasing as the operations and our patrolling increased in that area. They were well armed, were often supported with mortars and artillery. Having equipped dominating heights, they were interfering with our movement, not only on National Highway 1 Alpha, but also on the smaller roads and tracks going up to our posts on the LOC. Now, none of our posts had been attacked by them. Again, this was clever, this thing. The infiltration of these army personnel took through, it went through the nalas and other places, but they did not go anywhere near the posts which were there on the LOC at that time. And they did not try to either fire at them or attack them. On 23rd May 1999, the Chiefs of Staff Committee took a unanimous decision to work on a joint military strategy, including the use of naval and air power. When we had this meeting, all three of us were on the same grid. I had just come back after European trip and then spent 2 days traveling to Srinagar and Udhampur and these areas to get a detailed briefing. And that is how I briefed my colleagues of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. This permission that we sought, that we want to work together and we want to work on a military strategy, was given by the CCS next day with the condition that you all know that we shall not cross the line of control or IB. Now, in the first week of June, I had a conversation with the Prime Minister, and I managed to convince him that we may have to. He didn't say anything, but he accepted the fact that we may have to cross the line of control, our international border, just in case we fail to achieve the aim as given by them on the line of control in this area, Kargil sector. In working out our military strategy, some relevant questions that we had to consider ourselves. How much forces in the West to prevent Pakistan doing any more damage in Kargil and to undo the situation? That was primarily the army, really. What political objectives will be given to us? And these are the questions that came to our mind, and we discussed that. Will the government be prepared to declare a war and go the whole hog? Incidentally, the war was never declared. And again, for this reason, I partly blame the intelligence agencies who kept harping on, jihadis and mujahideen, etc. Besides the nuclear factor, of course, was there. So will the CCS allow conflict escalation, induction of Air Force, which had been refused earlier by them, and also the use of utilization of Navy? How will escalation dominance work the new Indo-Pakistan Indo-Pakistan nuclear environment? We were considered a nuclear rogue nation by this time, and there were severe sanctions imposed on us, particularly by the Western countries. How will the government handle international opinion? Unless political leadership declares a war, how do we achieve large-scale mobilization without causing alarm in the country and abroad? How soon could we launch an offensive, if and when permitted? How will the monsoon climate, we are now talking of June, July area time, impact our war effort? We needed to take stock of our inventories, review urgently our capabilities for defensive as well as offensive operations. I'm just giving you, this is the kind of an appreciation that we have to do at that level before you work out on any military strategy. The crux of our military strategy was to adopt an aggressive posture in the air, on the seas, and along the line of control, and along the international border to prevent Pakistan from focusing on Kargil and to maintain capability to undertake defensive and offensive operations. When a war takes place and it can escalate very quickly, so you have to be prepared not only for what you are doing on the spot where escalation has started, but you have to look at the larger picture that tomorrow what will happen, day after tomorrow what will happen. So you have to look at the larger picture, and that's what we did. Although we were politically mandated not to cross the line of control or the border, in a dynamic situation like war, one has to consider all possible contingencies. In this situation, further escalation of the war could not be ruled out, either due to Pakistani action or for us to achieve the given objective. My plan and instruction, therefore, were to the army that our forces should be deployed in such a state of readiness so that at 6 days' notice, we should be able to launch an offensive operation anywhere across the line of control and international border. I'm talking about the army, but same way, the Navy had already moved better part of its eastern fleet from Bay of Bengal to the Arabian Sea, and they were already started chasing the Pakistani tankers and this. This deployment had to be achieved with maximum security and minimum disturbance to normal air, rail, and road. Incidentally, I got all corps commanders to sign the new op instruction, handwritten, sent to the military operations directorate to them. So all that readiness had been achieved during that period. We decided to abide by the political aims and terms of reference, but to keep our military options open and to extend, make it visible to Pakistan also. They were not prepared on the other fronts. So we thought no harm in making it visible. Some of our patrols on the ground also, particularly in Rajasthan sector, we told the tanks that, look, don't worry, you can go right up to the international border. If Pakistan pumped in more troops in Kargil Siachen sector to strengthen its position or took initiative elsewhere, we would retaliate and cross the line of control or IB. Also, if we could not evict Pakistan from Kargil by the end of monsoon season, we should be prepared to cross the IB in September, October. So broadly, the military strategy was, I'll just, a military posture all along the western border to prevent Pakistan from reinforcing its forces opposite Kargil, threaten and maintain pressure on Pakistan throughout land, air, and sea border, try and create strategic imbalance. This is an important term because at that level you have to create imbalance in the other's mind. And we are now talking of strategic imbalance for Pakistan and its armed forces. Be prepared to launch forces across the border or LOC at short notice. And I told you that Mr. Vajpayee had, in principle, agreed that if required, we could do that. I now come to strategic lessons. Kargil War broke out within 2 months of the Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan signing the Lahore Declaration with much fanfare. We all know that. It proved Admiral J.C. Wiley's, American strategist, naval strategist. His first basic assumption in his paper Military Strategy, a general theory of power, he writes, despite whatever effort there may be to prevent it, there may be a war. And this is what we saw during Kargil. And again, this is what we saw in 2020. Military history tells us that nations who neglect this historical fact make themselves vulnerable to military surprise and defeat. This assumption, therefore, is a reminder to the politicians and to strategists to visualize security threats, the possibility and nature of conflicts, and to always remain prepared. We cannot predict with certainty the type and pattern of war for which we prepare ourselves. It has seldom been possible to forecast the time, the place, the scope, the intensity, and the general tenor of a conflict. This assumption implies that our security plans should cater for the complete spectrum of conflict. Our military strategies and doctrines must be flexible, capable of application in any unforeseen circumstances. As military history very often tells us, planning for uncertainty is less dangerous than planning for certitude. You can't be fixed on certain ideas. Other important lessons were there may be remote chances for a full-scale conventional war between two nuclear weapon states. But as long as there are territory-related disputes, and currently, as you know, we have it with both Pakistan and China, the adversary can indulge in a proxy war or a conventional war or both. We have to keep that in our mind. A major military challenge is that no loss of territory is acceptable to our public and political authority. It is therefore essential to have credible strategic and tactical intelligence and assessments. Without credible intelligence and information, it's very difficult to say that, yes, we will defend every inch of border. It's not possible. And we saw that in Galwan, you know how. So we need credible intelligence assessments and effective surveillance, both. A military operation requires moral high ground. The adversary has to be exposed and denied any moral justification. And we did that successfully. Initially, we were not very sure because we were both, the media as well as us, we were trying to learn things from the. But finally, I can say that we did that very successfully. And what I am emphasizing is a comprehensive media and information strategy, which has to be part of our overall strategy. New strategic environment calls for faster decision-making, versatile combat organization, rapid deployment, and synergy amongst all elements involved in the war effort. I'm not talking of just the three services, but I'm now talking of all stakeholders in the government. This includes the three services as well as all civilian organizations involved in the national security effort. Any war in future will require close political oversight and politico-civil military interaction. Therefore, I'm now repeating a point which has already been made by General Sharma. I very strongly believe that it is essential to keep the military leadership in the security and strategic decision-making loop, not at the time of the crisis, but all the time. You cannot start preparing and briefing the military कि अभी आप ये कर रही हो. It has to be done throughout. So my talk today has been on strategic planning and implementation, what we did in the Army headquarters and the other two service headquarters. It needs to be remembered, however, that the tactical actions and implementation of operational plans are more important than just strategic planning. Test of any plan is how it ends, never how it begins. The credit for victory in Kargil, quite deservedly, goes to the bravery and dedication shown on the battlefield by our soldiers and young officers. They were upfront, not hesitating to make any sacrifice to uphold the regimental and national pride and dignity. On the basis of great determination and high morale and brilliant junior leadership, our troops performed superbly. And I'll end up with my last lesson, and therefore, looking after our human resource, our human capital in the armed forces becomes extremely important, because that, I believe, was a very major factor which won us that war. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
May I now request the DG USI to kindly give a token of appreciation to General Malik.
One is always, so this is a strategic care book. This is the 8th series. Happens on the lines of national defense, review and national security stuff.
Is always educated by the books and
we're very happy to know we started doing joint publications with Army War College. And this is our first publication on India's strategic thought and multi-domain warfare perspectives. The faculty and the higher command officers have contributed, so has our resource faculty.
Thank you.
I booked now also with Sam Rifles and made this offer to other war colleges as well.
That all of us have to work together. Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you for your illumination.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very insightful talk, sir. The Ladakh and Kargil sectors have gone through tumultuous periods since independence, and this region has been at the forefront of significant battles in the wars India has fought. 25 years ago, as has just been brought out, in 1999, in this remote area isolated by high mountains with hostile climatic conditions, was where a military ingress by Pakistan took place across the line of control. I think we're quite clear in saying, sir, it's a military ingress.
Uh, and the intelligence failure was compounded by a sense of disbelief at the highest echelons that Pakistan had signed the recent Lahore Declaration while its troops at that time had secretly crossed into vacant Indian territory. The eviction of the intruders was then carried out as a result of near suicidal and frontal infantry attacks due to the restraints which we've discussed just now of the not crossing the LOC, though you've brought out that should a contingency have arisen, we would have been allowed to cross the LOC. The Indian soldiers attacked uphill over rugged open terrain in the face of aim fire after long and arduous marches in rarefied high altitude atmospheres. Though these assaults resulted in casualties, but we engaged the enemy and were extremely successful in forcing him to vacate all the areas he had occupied. The bravery of the Indian soldiers, the leadership at all levels. There's an article by Jal Mahendra Puri, he wrote in the clause, who won the war, whose war was it? And Sir said, it's everybody, at all levels, everybody contributed for the war. It was not only the junior leadership, the CEOs, the div commander, and of course you, sir, who led the army and the other service chiefs at that time. So it was a combined, effort that led to the success at that time, sir. And Prime Minister Vajpayee at that time said, Kargil sent the equivocal message to our adversaries that any military threat to our country will be dealt with swiftly, strongly, and effectively. The extraordinary speed with which victory was achieved demonstrated the coordination, skill, training, and professionalism of our armed forces. There remains no doubt that we can safeguard peace only when we have the strength to make aggression costly and futile. Today, sir, we have been privileged to listen to your views on this conflict, and we also have with us a galaxy of speakers who have been part of the conflict. And may I now call upon Lieutenant General Mahendra Puri, who was GMC 8 Mountain Div at that time, to kindly give out his account of the battles. Sir.
Malik, Jan B.K. Sharma, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Now, I'll just like to thank General Sharma, DG USI, for having given me this occasion to come and speak to you today. It's been 25 years, more or less to the date, when the Kargil War was fought in the high mountains, in the treacherous mountains, in the most inhospitable places the country or the world has ever seen. This 25 years should be a dedication to the 527 soldiers we lost. It's not a small number. Both the divisions, 3 mountain division and 8 mountain division, we had very high casualties, and I think it is an indication of the bravery which General Malik has brought out, of the young officers, of the men who confronted very great odds to bring us victory and restore the honor and dignity of the country. Now, before I tell you, to give you an overview of what actually happened, my division, 8 Mountain Division, was in the valley in counterinsurgency role. And this is Monica, in fact, brought the division from the east in 1989 to the valley. And in 1998, when I took over, we have brought the situation under considerably, under control. The election was in 1996, and by 1998, we were in a very comfortable position. And in 1999, there was also a talk of doing a part of the division into our permanent location in Bala, Kishtwar, and Badarwa. This was in April. We were talking about the election of a brigade in the summer months. And a month later, we learned of the intrusions into the Batalic sector through a shepherd, through a normal grazier who informed the local battalion. And so the conversation started as to what is the type of intrusion. Like General Malik is mentioned, and it's no secret that it was a failure of intelligence at the national and also at the military level. And I was in Sharifabad, and somewhere in the third week of May, I was given a sort of a hint that my division may be required to go across the line, across Rujula Pass and take over the responsibility of Mashko and the Dara sector. I think it was on 26th or 27th of May that the Chief General Malik was visiting Srinagar, and I was informed to be at the airfield, at the helipad, as we were taking off. The defense minister was there, the chief was there, and GOC 6 Mountain Dev was there along with me and the corps commander. We took off in Mumbai, and that's where the chief he took me aside and he said, "Okay, now this is the situation, and would you be able to do this task?" I said, "Sure." And I asked him, I requested him, I said, "We just take two conditions. That is, firstly, there should be no pressure. And secondly, this operation is going to have heavy casualties." I must say, he kept his word, and throughout the operation, he never put any pressure on any of his, or any of us. Definitely not from the Mountain Division, and he visited me a number of times during the operations, but never once did he question what are the operation plans, why is this happening, why is that happening. He gave all the encouragement, all the resources which possibly he could muster. So thereafter, we got inducted into the Dras and Mashko sectors. And first thing was as to why did Pakistan really go about Kargil? Why did they select Kargil as an objective to do this mischief? In 19, I think we have to go back a bit in history. It was a of victory in 1971, memberment of Pakistan to the east and west. Then the Siachen Glacier, which was occupied by us as a preemptive to their maneuvers in that area. And then the control which had established over the valley in insurgency had failed. So I and he must have been the brigade commander in 98, when in 84, when we went for Siachen. So it's very important to again uh, Kargil, isolate Siachen and get some credit for whatever is being done. And they convinced their own political leadership. You must have read a number of books in which they boosted the ego of the prime minister, saying that letters that this is the opportunity when you can annex Kashmir as a part of Pakistan territory. So these were the basic reasons, I think, why he went. And of course, like General Malik has mentioned, there were wide gaps which were not kept under surveillance, and he intruded into these areas. He came about 6 to 8 kilometers deep into our territory, and uh, I think he had a number of posts spread over about a frontage. The actual frontage of the military intrusion was about 130 kilometers. So it's a very large frontage in the hills, particularly in this type of terrain. Thereafter, what are the Pakistan aims? They wanted to internationalize the JNK problem, which was not on the radar screen of the International Committee of Nations. Then they wanted to interdict the line of communication Srinagar to Leh, and then isolate Leh and consequently isolate the Siachen Glacier. And he was successful at that in the initial stages of the war. And of course, to create a launch pad where he could get additional militants, get across this place, get into Himachal Pradesh and create further problems for us. And these were the basic reasons as to why Pakistan intruded and why we created all these problems for us. Nevertheless, on 1st of June, I took over the command of operational command of Drass and the Mashko sectors. And the first task was to prepare the division, which was gradually getting inducted from the valley into the Dras and Mashko sectors. Now, you must just want to make you realize that a division which for years has been fighting an insurgency war, it requires a drastic mindset to make them fight a conventional war. Because conventional war and counterinsurgency are totally different warfare. So we have to reform the plans. We have to acclimatize to the second stage of acclimatization and because we wanted to complete the operation before the snows had set in. Because had the snows set in, Pakistan over that period would have consolidated the gains and it would be very difficult for us to evict them in the next campaigning season. So this is the main reasons as to why we want to uh, show the speed and velocity of our responses. Unfortunately, for us, the Zujala Pass opened much before the normal time when it used to open sometimes in June. It opened in May, and which allowed the induction of my division into this area. Now, what are the challenges which we faced during this time? The first was, of course, terrain. The terrain is the most inhospitable terrains. And I think the Kargil War was fought in an area where no other army in the world has ever fought. It's ranging from 16,000 to 20,000 feet. Now, that's not a small height. The implications of high altitude are immense. You can't walk distance, steps, you have to hop. And mind you, the soldiers are going uphill with 30 kgs, 20 kgs of load on their back and their personal weapons. So these are pretty great challenges which have to be met. And the commanders, the brigade commanders did a fantastic job in taking this point while we were logistically building up for the operations to motivate them to be, sort of reoriented them from counterinsurgency to conventional operations and also to build up our attacks which are to take place subsequently. Now, on the first attack was by a battalion which got inducted the earliest from the valley. That was two Rajputana rifles led by a very fine officer called Ravindranath. We unfortunately lost him 6 years back. He had left the army, but he died of a cardiac arrest. But he was a very fine leader, and he led this battalion commendably for tunneling. Now, why was tunneling selected as the first objective? It was the deepest penetration into our area, and it had it was defending the national highway by observation and fire. There was, as you know, that time, May onwards, the winter stocking, when the road opens, the winter stocking of Leh garrison and the military posts takes place. The civil traffic which was moving on this was brought to more or less a halt. The transit camp of Jinas was razed to the ground by their shelling. So this was the situation in which we were on the 1st of June. So we took our time, and like I mentioned, the chief never put any pressure, and he didn't put any pressure. Consequently, down the chain of command, there were no pressures. So we took our time. We took about 3 days, artillery, built up our resources, you know, retrain the battalions to conventional operations, reform our battle drills and battle procedures, and finally we were ready on the 12th of June to launch the first attack. I was wanting to launch this attack on the 11th, but it was a Friday. Very interesting, how the psyche of the Indian soldier works. On Friday, uh, the CEO of 18 Gawal, he gave me a call on the net. He said, "Sir, I have a request if you can block the attack by a day." I said, "Why?" It doesn't suit us. It will suit the opposition, the enemy more than us. So I said, "Yeah, ठीक है, चलो, let's go your way." So I delayed it to Saturday. I said, "Now don't say that Saturday is going to be inauspicious for us because we are meeting on Saturday." So finally we went on Saturday and with 10 rounds of artillery support, a very fine attack, which was really it seemed a very tide in our favor. That was the turning point of the Battle of Kargil. Once we had secured tunneling, then the rest of the operations were, I won't say they were just formalities. We suffered very, very heavy casualties even in later operations, but they helped us. We knew that the enemy, we could go up these heights, we could take our men up to these heights, and we could capture these heights. Two was again put into a second attack after about 14 days, where they suffered three officers and killed, who are killed, and three JCOs wounded, 32 wounded, including three JCOs. So that was the intensity of the operations which were being fought. And of course, General Joshi will cover his own operations. But here I must tell you a very interesting incident of General Joshi's battalion. He was earmarked after tunneling to go for the next objective, which was 0.5140. So there was a intervening small post called Hub, which was between tunneling and 0.5140. So I had I was sitting in the brigade headquarters after the tunneling attack, and I went and I saw his commanding officer. He was moving around the bus. So I said, "What are you doing? The bus is on top." He said, "No, sir, I'm here and, I'm pushing my battalion, my stores up and all." I said, you should be there filling up these stores rather than pushing them from here." So he said, "I'm not very fit and all, so I don't think I'll be able to make it." So I said, "Okay, you're relieved of your command." I spoke to the commander and I lined up Yogi. He was ready to go in for the operation. I sent him his badges of rank. He had already been approved for the lieutenant colonel. I sent him his badges of rank, and I said, "Now just take over the battalion and go log." He's the one who captured 5140 and later 0.4875, getting two PVCs for his battalion and bravest of brave. So this is what leadership really does at this level. Uh, Junior leadership at the battalion level is how and bring us victory. And he's finally retired as an army commander. Great credit to him. The second very interesting incident I wanted to mention, I mentioned about three pimples to you. Now, three pimples was again a very dominating feature, which gave us perhaps the first out of the entire operation. We had very heavy casualties, like I mentioned. So I wanted the opportunity to realize the date it actually went in, and Ravindranath, he was the CEO. So I said, "I want this operation to go on the 26th or 27th." He said, "On 24th or 25th." He says, "Sir, I'm not prepared for 24th or 25th. I want to go on the 27th or 28th." In the heat of the battle, when you're discussing these things, you tend to lose your temper. So this discussion was going on, and I was insisting that he goes on the 25th. He said, "Me, I'm not prepared for this." I said, "Okay, then I'll have to earmark another battalion." And he said, "Sir, that's your choice." And he went out. I sat down for 5 minutes, had a glass of water, controlled by nerves, and I called him back. I said, "Ravi, come back." I said, "I'm extremely sorry. Uh, you go on the 20th as you have designed to, and you will get all the support. I'm just saying that the type of, moral courage this officer had. This is the type of officers we need. No, even in time of war, that this is not possible, and this is a better option, this is a better solution, which I'm offering you. I think these are very great qualities in leadership. And we had the artillery. We had a very good, I had a very good commander artillery, and Alok is over here, who was commanding a artillery regiment at that time. So one day, we decided that we would use the artillery in a direct firing role. So I asked the commander to get me a 25-pounder gun. So he got me a 25-pounder gun from the valley. But, we couldn't lift it to the place, we couldn't carry it to the place where we wanted. Only possible to engage the target. So the commander artillery, he came up with the idea. He said, we just got the Bofors inducted into the sector. He said, let's try it with a Bofor. So we tried with a, and we placed it at one of the very dominating places where we could engage the targets. Now, one of the units was in very close vicinity of Tololing. He was there for about 2-3 weeks, and we asked him to control the artillery fire and let us know the effect of the impact of this gun. So, when we fired the first round and we asked him, he said, "Sir, this is going to be a devastating thing. It's shaken up the entire place." So we went about using the artillery in the opposite of direct firing rounds, which really changed the course of the battle. And I think the artillery played a huge part in bringing us victory in Kargil. And I'm sure Alok will cover this aspect uh, in great detail when he talks about this operations. So this is actually how it all transpired. The media was very helpful to us. In fact, this was the first war which was transmitted and seen by the entire country. The support which we got from the local, from the population was tremendous, because every cremation of a soldier who had died or an officer who had died was attended by lakhs of people in the villages or in the small towns or wherever the cremation was taking place. So the army connected the people in front with the entire nation. And after the operations, I think it was the 8th or 10th of August, that you have Raksha Bandhan. And I was to get 1,000 Rakis and thousands of cars from children, saying that what good job the army is doing in this area. So, I mean, these are very emotional things which, at the time of war, which you suddenly see the connection between the military and the troops who are fighting and the citizen of the country. So, I'd also like to mention about the officers and the young men who got killed in this operation. Now, they have behind the parents, brothers, young wives, just got married over them. These real loyalists, basically, they are the ones who need to be saluted by all of us. They maintained their dignity, they brought up their children in such a wonderful way. All are well settled, the regiments are well protected, the battalions are well protected. And to give you a instance, rifles, there was a last night Bicha Singh. He died in the Battle of Tolling. And his wife, she brought up the sons, and the youth boy commissioned as an officer into 2 Rajaf. And when the 20 years celebrations were held 5 years back, and the Prime Minister was also there, and his mother came on the stage, and to be applauded by all of us. So I think this is the spirit in which the army functions. And like the chief said, I think we don't need the army to be looked, not for any other reason, but because they are doing so much for the country. It's really the nation is the last instrument which you have maintain your dignity. Uh, Before I end, I would, just like to mention one or two things. Lessons learned, they've all been disseminated to various people who are concerned with it. I don't think this audience would be very much interested in knowing the technical lessons, etc. But what I think is very essential is the future was whatever be the type of which is going to get into the war, whether it's high technology, whether you have advanced sort of weaponry, you have cyber warfare, you have hybrid warfare, you have any kind of. But for a country like us, where country is so emotional, boots on the ground is a must. You can't have a country where you don't see the requirement of boots on the ground. You have to physically capture objectives, you have to physically retrieve some objectives. An inch lost, you can see what happens in the parliament when just a small yards of piece, which is not even known where it is lost. So I think boots on the ground is a very essential aspect. And secondly, the lessons which the army learned in the Kargil War, I would really appreciate the US are doing some work. I can see that. But I think it must to be disseminated continuously because this is a war which has been like General. I'd like to again quote him with whatever we have, like that like General Malik had said, whatever we have. So we need absolutely modern weapons, definitely, but we also need to be sure that the army is there to protect the integrity and the honor of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. You gave a wonderful insight, sir, into the army and the spirit and how you executed this task that was given to you and the switch from Syria operations to fighting a conventional war. I think, sir, in 1971 also, 8th at that time, did this switch under General Krishna Rao when they were in Nagaland and they went to. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now may I request Lieutenant General Y.K. Joshi, who was commanding 13 Jackraff at that time, and the battalion got 2 Paramveer Chakras under him. And later on, he went on to become the Northern Army commander. So may I request him for his views.
Sir, you have to move this left and right. ये नहीं है
Okay.
इसको आगे पीछे करने के लिए क्या करना है सर लेफ्ट राइट में ओके General Malik sir, General B.K. Sharma, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. At the outset, I would like to thank General B.K. Sharma for inviting me here today to speak about my battalion operations during the Kargil War. It's a matter of immense pride for me, always. My chest swells with pride when I talk about 13 Jack rifles. Well, the Kargil War was unique. It was fought in very difficult high altitude terrain with heights ranging from 14 to 18,000 feet we talked about earlier. So in this battle, of course, the enemy was there, but before we could reach the enemy, we had to fight the weather, the terrain, and the climate. But for the Indian Army, these were minor hurdles, easily surmountable to accomplish the mission to evict the Pak infiltrators that had crossed the line of control and occupied certain features on our side of the line of control. So I consider myself singularly fortunate that I got the opportunity to command 13 Jack rifles in the most defining phase of the battalion's history, when the battalion played a key role in turning the tide during Operation Vijay. During this operation, my battalion captured two strategically very important features. One is point 5140 in the Dras sector on the Toroling Ridge, and the second was point 4875 in the Mashko Valley subsector. The battalion came out with flying colors, etched its name in the history of the Indian Army, honored with a total of 37 gallantry awards, including 2 Panvi Chakras, 8 Veer Chakras, and 14 Sena medals, a feat unparalleled in the war history of the nation. So while this was a very proud moment for me and for the battalion, but the victory came at a huge cost. 2 brave officers of my battalion and 14 other ranks laid down their lives for the honor of the nation. And the success of my battalion undoubtedly is attributed to the brave officers and the Jawans of the battalion who followed the regimental motto, Prashasta Ranveerta. The victory in battle is appreciated in letter and spirit. They're always there up front, ready to make the supreme sacrifice. So while this was about 25 years ago, but to me, it just feels like yesterday. Taking you all down to the battalion level, my battalion was deployed in Sopore, carrying out counter-insurgency operations as part of 192 Brigade, 8th Mountain Division. Having completed its tenure, the unit was due to move to Shahjahanpur. And I, as a young major at that time, as the 2IC of the battalion, had already taken the advance party and was sitting in Shahjahanpur when the infiltrations were detected and Operation Vijay was launched. Thereafter, for me personally, the Kargil War literally swept me off my feet, like a whirlwind. All of a sudden, the advance party was recalled back. We moved to Chandigarh. We were flown to Srinagar. And the very next day, on the 10th of June, I still recall, I was across the Zojila Pass and joined the battalion, which was in the area of Gumri, just across the Zojila Pass. 11th of June, we were placed under command 56th Mountain Brigade to be reserved for the capture of Toroling to 2 Rajarif. 12th of June, we moved to Dras. And on 13th of June, I was sitting on top of Toroling along with CO-18 Grenadiers, Colonel Kushal Thakur, under heavy artillery shelling all around me, and about 8 to 9 mortal remains of 18 Grenadiers, lying all around me. To me, just 5 days from Shahjahanpur, swimming pool, open air theatre, playing tennis morning, evening. The 5th day, I was sitting on Toroling under these conditions which I just explained. It happened so fast. And to me, I thought, it always occurred to me, it's a nightmare, and somebody's going to wake me up, and I'll be back in Shahjahanpur. But that was not to be. And as I was just adjusting, to the situation, my radio operator came running to me, and he said, "Saab, aapse GOC saab baat karna chahte hain, Jail Mahindapuri." I was surprised that why should the GOC want to speak to me? And he says, "Delta of Chanakya, my coordinate of Chanakya." Crisp, very short. He says, "Put on your pips, you are the commanding officer now. Any doubts?" And I had no doubts, but it took me a moment to digest this information, given those circumstances, sitting on top of Toroling, and the responsibility the general had entrusted upon me at that time. And it was a huge responsibility. We were middle of the war. Anyway, so the battalion moved up, and we captured the area of Rocky Knob, just across the Hum complex, on the 17th of June, and thereafter went on to capture point 5140. This is the point 5140 on the 20th of June. And this is where Captain Vikram Batra gave me the success signal, which was so famous later, Ye Dil Mange More. Subsequently, the battalion was tasked to capture point 4875, which he successfully captured on the 7th of July, but at the cost of a brave soldier of the battalion, Captain Vikram Batra. In fact, for the capture of point 4875, the battalion was awarded 2 Paramveer Chakras, Captain Vikram Batra posthumously and Rifleman Sanjay Kumar. So that was the intensity of the battle that took place at point 4875. Coming on to the lessons and the battle winning factors at the battalion level, I will talk about some very basic lessons and the battle winning factors with examples from my experience during the battle. Some practical points I observed during Operation Vijay. And the first and foremost lesson that I learned was that who dares wins. In the circumstances that prevailing there, everybody had fear, in your minds. Everybody is scared. Nobody wants to walk into a barrage of artillery or into a belt of fire of the medium machine gun coming from the top and lay down his life. But to win, succeed, you have to take the first step. You have to overcome your fear. Give you an example. The day we reached Dras on the 12th of June, when I looked around Dras, you saw huge mountains, not a blade of grass to take cover, artillery shelling going on. There were RT airburst all around us. On the road, I saw a vehicle, burning, which had been hit by the artillery shell. Other vehicles were speeding left and right on the highway in Dras, trying to avoid being hit by the RT shelling. Casualties being evacuated. And while we were, trying to understand the situation, you get orders to move up the same Tololing. So what comes to your mind? First thing is fear, self-preservation. But then that is what has to be overcome. So we mustered our courage, overcame our fear, and went up. Tololing, I never looked back. So bravery is not about not having fear. Bravery is about not allowing your fear to come in the way of doing your duty. This was the first very important lesson I can talk about at the battalion level. Second thing, what I talk about is that all soldiers, be it any battalion, any regiment, are all well motivated. They have to be led well. The soldiers will do the task allotted, come heaven or hell, and they will deliver at the personal risk. But they have to be led well. And this is where junior leadership comes in. This is the key, a very important aspect of our success during Operation Vijay. Two of my company commanders, Captain Vikram Batra and Captain Jamwal, and he was from the ASC attached officer, had less than 2 years service. And they are the ones, who led the attack on point 5140, which was a very, very difficult attack. A very steep gradient with the enemy sitting right on top. And when I was making my plans for the capture, sitting in the area of Rocky Knob and briefing them, and when the attack also went in, all the time that was playing up on my mind is, these youngsters who are the company commanders do not have even 2 years service, about 1.5 years service. Will they be able to deliver? And deliver they did. Third thing, initiative at junior level. Junior officers, JCOs have to take initiative. Give an example, Captain Vikram Batra, during the attack on point 4875, we launched the attack on the 4th. We could not capture, we got daylighted, I'll talk about this later again. And while we were at the top, there was a ledge which was leading from 4875, and on the mouth of which, the enemy was sitting with a sniper and a light machine gun. And there was no way that could have been circumvented. So 7th, 2 days, we continued with the ding-dong battle with the Pakistanis. And the 7th of July, early morning, Captain Naveen Anaberu, who was in the bunker right in the front, got injured badly. Vikram Batra took a patrol and he evacuated him. And that is the moment, his initiative. He realized that 2 days the battalion has been here and we had not been able to sort of make any headway onto this ledge. We're suffering casualties. And I can only visualize actually that he took the initiative and he single-handedly with his AK went ahead and charged onto that ledge, killing the Pakistanis and giving us a foothold. While since the enemy was sitting right in front, about 25-30 meters away, he also laid down his life in the bargain, but he gave us a foothold so that we could capture the area of point 4875. So this was the kind of initiative that our junior leaders had in the battalion. Next, General Sharma also talked about this innovation, ingenuity, and thinking on your feet at all times. This again is a very, very important aspect, at the battalion, at the company commander level. Thinking out of the box. So to give an example, when we were in the area of Hump complex, General Mandupuri talked about this. There was the entire Hump complex was full of boulders, which were all serving like sangars to the enemy, and the enemy snipers were sitting behind, inflicting casualties on us. And there was one bunker in the area of Rocky Knob, which we just could not destroy. So we fired rocket launchers, didn't work. Then we used HE airburst. We got 4 or 5 rocket launchers, fired HE airburst, but we were so close to them that again we could not judge the distance, and plus it was upslope. We lost 2 boys, didn't work. I walked back, came back onto the rolling top, and when I was looking for an answer, I saw a Milan detachment, Subhadar Chetri from some guard battalion, and I explained to him the area of Rocky Knob. I told him that is the objective, fire your Milan missile to destroy it. He fired the Milan, halfway it got grounded. It didn't hit the target. We fired another one, it didn't work. I looked around for some more, thinking about how to tackle this. We saw Igla missile. I had never seen an Igla while I had studied about it, JC, senior command and all that. I discussed with the detachment NCO over there, and he said this is a heat seeking. I was aware it's a heat seeking for anti-aircraft, but in an attempt to further innovate, we fired a RL illumination round onto the area of Rocky Knob in a ground burst role and tried to fire the Igla missile onto it to destroy it. And that is the time I realized when, after 2-3 rounds of firing illumination, we got 1 round onto the Rocky Knob bunker. And I immediately told him to fire on that. He pressed the trigger of the Igla, but I heard that humming sound. I didn't know I had fired an Igla. And it takes a couple of seconds for the Igla missile to lock on to the heat source. And by the time it could lock on, the fire got extinguished. So even that did not work, unfortunately. But what I'm trying to say is that continuously we were thinking on our feet, some way or the other, how to work on this. And finally, what worked was what General Mohindpuri just mentioned, the artillery in the direct firing role. I explained my situation to Brigadier Amar Rao, who was the brigade commander. He got 1 gun, from where he could have the direct line of sight to the area of Rocky Knob, and he handed over me the gun position, and I spoke to him, and within 2 rounds, I got 1 round on the area of Rocky Knob, and that it was blown to smithereens, and our attack then thereafter succeeded on that. So this is the way innovation, ingenuity, thinking on your feet is required at all levels. Adaptability and flexibility at all levels. After we captured 5140, we got orders to de-induct and rest and refit for 10 days in the area of Gumri. The unit moved to Gumri. The very next day, I got a call from the Colonel GS, Colonel Chabewal, that 13 Jackraff will go with 9 para-SF behind Tiger Hill in the area of Pariyonka Talab to go and link up with Colonel Pito, CO 9 paras. So I moved up, and we were discussing the load tables, etc. with Colonel Pito, how to go about doing that. Then I got a call again that no, you will not go with 9 para-SF, you will now go to Tiger Hill. The next day, I sent my company commanders. They were halfway up the Tiger Hill when again task got changed, and we were told, Jan Mundipur told me, no, I've got a special task for you. You will go to point 4875. So that was the requirement of the day, grouping, regrouping, changing of tasks at the drop of a hat. But we need to be adaptable, and that flexibility is very, very important. Similarly, again, General Mandupuri talked about it, that we need time to adjust from the counterinsurgency role to a conventional role. We need time for recce and planning, etc. Circumstances will never permit all that. You may get it, well and good. If you don't get it, you need to adapt and find ways and means to go ahead and do that. Leading from the front. In the army, leading from the front is a very successful strategy. There's no 2 ways about it. In the battalion, especially in the infantry battalion, everything revolves around the commanding officer. What a commanding officer is thinking, his body language, his confidence, that trickles down to the last Jawan in the battalion. If the CO is confident and up and about, the battalion will deliver. So that is very, very important. At all times, you need to be at the top of the situation to react immediately to first-hand information, not to second or third-hand information or to any Chinese whispers, so that you can intervene at the right time when required. To give an example, during the attack on point 4875, we launched the attack on the 4th night. We should have captured it on the 5th by first light, but the terrain was very, very difficult, and we could not reach the top, and we got daylighted. So by the time we got daylighted, we were in very close proximity to the enemy. And he started, firing, and they were inflicting casualties onto us. The company commander, Major Gurpreet, that time spoke to me and explained to me, so this is a situation, we are in dire straits. There was no way, I was in the fire base. There was no way I could have got artillery fire onto them, even direct artillery fire, because our troops were very, very close to them that time. In the fire base, we had faggot launchers. I told Kaushal, Havaldar Kaushal, explained to him that bunker, that is bunker, please fire immediately. Now, when he looked through the telescope, he saw the bunker, but he saw a lot of troops of our own in the close proximity. And he hesitated momentarily. Time was critical. I had been an instructor in the infantry school in the anti-tank group. I told him to get to one side. I immediately got down behind the launcher and I fired the missile. Now, when we fired the Milan missile on Tololing, it was absolutely horizontal. It didn't work. But the faggot missile, we were firing at about 45 to 50 degrees onto 4875. It worked. And it went and exactly hit the bunker. I fired another missile, again hit the bunker, and the enemy, was shaken up and he suffered some casualties. And that is the time Sanjay, who was the leading scout of Charlie Company of the leading section, immediately took advantage of the situation and launched the assault. While he got injured badly, but he took the enemy LMG and again, fired on the enemy and captured the two top Sanghas, which were sort of creating problem for us. And that is where he earned his Paramveer Chakra. So the presence there and the ability to fire the faggot missiles was a turning point, for the capture of point 4875. Then at the battalion level, it's all about izzat, self-respect. It is for his self-respect that the Jawan will walk into danger at risk to personal life or limb. And thereafter, it's about his buddy, his platoon, his company, and the Paltan. That's it. Paltan ka naam badnaam nahi hona chahiye. It is also about upbringing in the battalion. The rigorous training that you have done with the boys, the traditions in the battalions, the bonding between the officers, JSUs and Jawan during peacetime. That is very important. It can't just happen, during when you're going to war. It has to be a completely integrated team. So I was lucky again. I was commissioned with 13 Jack and went on to command 13 Jack. And my entire service was in 13 Jack only, fortunately. So the entire battalion knew me, my capabilities, and I knew about 80 to 90% of the boys, the JSUs, and their capability, whom to use where. So that again is very, very important. The trust and faith in the team of the leader and in the leader of the team it works like magic. Coming on to some operational lessons. In high altitude mountains, a unidirectional attack is unlikely to succeed. So all the attacks that went in were all multi-directional. At the brigade level, even at the battalion level, there were always two companies from two different flanks launching the attack. Altitude areas, combat superiority for an attack in these mountains, 8:1 was also, found to be inadequate, and the combat ratios that were to be used, combat superiority, were 9:1 to 10:1 in certain areas. Troops, operating to scale heights at that altitude in high altitude area, 14,000 feet and above, physical fitness is of paramount importance. Altitude warfare, more than anywhere else, a young profile of officers and men in combat units is very, very vital. Greater need for artillery and its ammunition. Rate of movement is very slow. So RT did play a major role. I'm sure they will talk about it. And also, like I mentioned earlier, the unconventional use of RT in a direct firing role was a game changer. The impact of high altitude, rarefied atmosphere, sub-zero temperatures on weapons and equipment, has to be catered for, which now we are, of course, doing that. Logistics played a major role. When we went in for the attack on 4875, for 3 days till the fire base, we used one company, we used a fighting porter company of 28 RR, which again, luckily is Jackrif. And we built up the heavy weapons, the ammunitions, the launchers, the rations. And then on the 4th day is when we were able to launch the assault. Evacuation of casualties, use of helicopters played a major role. So these were some of the important lessons that we learned during Operation Vijay. And post 1999, lots has happened. This situation has totally changed with regard to our preparedness of the Indian Army as a whole, and of course in Ladakh. And as we stand today, a Kargil-like event, cannot be repeated by Pakistan anywhere along the line of control. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Wonderful insight into battalion level operations and the lessons you've drawn at that time, as well as the spirit of your unit. I agree with you regarding the izzat of the regiment. That comes foremost every time. Now may I request Major General Alok Dev, commanded his RT regiment at that time during the Kargil conflict, and RT has been much talked about. Maybe have your views, sir.
Slide. Slide. General Malik, General Puri, Director General USI, distinguished guests and panelists, good afternoon. It's a privilege to be here today, and all thanks to General B.K. Sharma, who decided to invite me here to share my experiences. What I'm going to tell you essentially is the story of a commanding officer and his regiment. So this is going to be part reminiscence, and towards the end, maybe a couple of pointers for the future. General Puri has brought out in great detail to how we got inducted and how the stage was set for the battle. In May 1999, the units of 8 Mountain Div were on a different task in the valley. And there used to be an annual war game in the division, and I was privileged to attend one. And that was a war game on conventional operations. And the last question used to be that how much time do you think it's going to take to switch from CI role to conventional operations? So we never thought that such a situation would come to pass. But the enemy felt otherwise. So obviously, we could not implement the DS solution. The warning order from the brigade headquarters was received on the 13th of May in my unit. This is 8 Mountain Artillery Brigade. The first battery of my regiment moved out on the 15th of May. One battery of my regiment was already in trans LC firing role in the Uri subsector. And the regiment, less 2 batteries, therefore, moved out on the 16th of May. And the entire regiment was in its position in Dras on the 17th of May and in action. That is, it was firing. And this entire move had been coordinated by my second in command, Major Mushtaq Hussain. I was on leave due to a personal bereavement. While the regiment was in action by 17th May, I could reach there 2 days later on the 19th. For an artillery regiment on a 2-point deployment in the valley, moving for conventional operations entailed, like for any other unit, a number of things. But in our case, prime issue was to get our guns back into action. They were mothballed and lying in a gun park. So to get them out, get them cleaned up, get them serviceable, get them fit, connect the entire paraphernalia and move up, that was a challenge. But that was managed very successfully with a lot of assistance from the brigade and higher headquarters. I recall my commander, Brigadier Lakhvinder Singh, now General Lakhvinder. He pulled in the entire first line of the brigade and made it available to us to supplement whatever transport we had. When we reached Dras, my second in command was managing the guns, and I moved along with headquarters 56 Brigade, which had also been inducted along with us to their location, which was the location of the old Dras battalion. There's a battalion still there today. One is happy to see. There was a small artillery component already functioning there, and this belonged to a medium regiment which was en route to Siachen. And when the intrusions suddenly started getting noticed, the CO was asked to stay behind, send his gun forward, and establish some sort of setup there. So this is what I took over. This became an ad hoc fire direction center, and with 2 officers around the clock manning the radio sets, this was the nerve center of artillery operations in Dras. As my GOC has brought out, we were part of a mountain division in counterinsurgency. We were thrust into conventional operations, and we were thrust into an area with totally different terrain and weather conditions. Obviously, there would be shortages, and there would be equipment which was not as suitable for this operation. For example, our camouflage nets for the valley pattern, not suitable for Ladakh. Yes, we had shortages. We had radio sets which were less. We had Sandhya equipment which was less. Our cable was less. Our meteorological equipment hadn't come because we never used those things before. What, however, was available in plenty was ammunition, rations, and the resolve that this intrusion shall be thrown out. Adding to this was the sheer encouragement and positive attitude of commanders and staff at all levels. I remember being briefed in Srinagar headquarters by Commander 15 Corps Artillery Brigade, Brigadier Raman Malhotra, and he gave me a full briefing on all that he knew. My own commander, Brigadier Lakhvinder, was very, very professional, guiding us throughout. I remember the visits of our GOC, General Puri. He used to come to visit us, and most of the time I was located in 56 Brigade headquarters. And he would ask us about our operations, greet us with a smile, and his staff would be carrying an Inmarsat phone. That was a novelty those days, and with that Inmarsat, anyone who was in dire need to communicate with his family, officer, JC, or Jawan, that phone was available to him. So this is the sort of leadership we had. It was all very positive. And even the corps commander, I recall him once in 56 Brigade Ops Room. General Kishan was discussing direct firing with a CO like myself, deciding as to where we could place the guns to get the best output. And the shortages I mentioned were all filled up. Within a few weeks, we got new maps. The maps we had earlier had been taken over from 3DIV. They were old. They had a lot of places which were unmapped. But we got 1 into 25,000 maps. I remember Commander 56, Brigadier All, now General All retired, both of us sitting and orienting ourselves on this new map because we are normally used to dealing with 150,000 maps. And this was on a double scale. We got more radio sets, we got cable, we got the Digicore metadata, we got the latest intelligence updates to replace the target lists which are old. All the deficiencies were filled up and we were ready to go. By the last week of May, we had commenced our initial probe. The division was still being inducted, but 56 Brigade and this artillery regiment 197 of mine, we were already in action, and we were carrying out patrolling, and we were firming in on what the enemy deployment was all about. The orbit of 56 Brigade was also increasing with battalions coming in. Artillery orbit was increasing. We were getting Bofors guns from within the theater and from outside. We were getting heavy mortars from 19th Division. And by the 10th or 11th of June, the artillery buildup was complete and we were ready to go for action. You can see the panorama in front of you. Incidentally, this is a photograph I took from the gallery in the Dras War Memorial when I visited there once. And this gives out the entire panorama of 56 Mountain Brigade, starting from the right, Tololing to Ham, etc., down to Tiger Hill. Of course, Tiger Hill was captured by a different brigade, 192, which was, and my knowledge is restricted to 56 Brigade, even so. Initial attempts to capture Tololing hadn't succeeded. We just had about 5 batteries, I remember, and that was insufficient. We didn't have enough knowledge of the terrain, but those attacks did help us in establishing the exact location of the enemy. This is the area of Tololing. You can see how vast it is. And the peaks were covered with fairly heavy snow. The importance of the Tololing feature has already been brought out by my former GOC. By then, 8 Mountain Div had been inducted in full, and my commander, Brigadier Lakhvinder, had gone around, done a lot of recce, and formed his concept of operations. You can see how wide this feature is. So based on the topography and likely enemy dispositions, it was decided to fire upon Tololing
from all possible directions. The east, from the south, to the southwest, to the west. Artillery was deployed accordingly in spatially separated gun areas with clear lines of fire so that the shells were not obstructed by any intervening crests. The gun areas were accordingly selected, and direct firing was a big asset for this. This plan is partly from memory and partly from what little actually I recall. The photograph on the top right belongs to Major Vivek Gupta. He was the leading company commander on the south-eastern approach. He lost his life in this attack. And the photograph of the officer below him is of my OP officer, Captain M.K. Singh, who pressed home the attack till the time the CO, Colonel Ravindranath, came and took over the operation. Fire plan. Fire plan, 20 batteries, which included one multi-barrel rocket launcher, each rocket launcher with 40 tubes, total of 240 tubes. A very simple fire plan. This is something which the teachers rise from JC course upwards. And this is what we fired. Just prior to the HR, we fired 6 into 155 Bofors on the west face of Tololing from 1930 to 2000 hours, just before the HR. What was the impact of all this? Plastering the guns with TMT from all directions, exploiting the equipment characteristics of, say, Bofors, carrying out effective registration over a period of days, firing check rounds just before the attack, using senior officers as anchor OPs. I was detailed as an anchor OP. I was a little nonplussed. There were two of us. But when I was there and as I saw the brigade attack unfolding, I saw the amount of shells bursting and the sheer confusion of battle at night. I realized that it is important to have someone there who understands the entire operation and can take decisions if required. In case we had to modify plan, because plans are good only till the time the first shot is fired, it was possible to do so, not through any textbook method, but you picked up your set and you spoke to the fire direction center and said, tell this fellow to stop and tell this fellow to carry on. But to that effect, so that there was no doubt in anybody's mind as to what we wanted to do. Mention must also be made of two other innovative things that our brigade did. As General Puri mentioned, when we were talking about direct firing, the Bofors were one option. Another option in the interim, before the Bofors moved up, was using the 75-24 pack howitzer. Now, these are vintage guns. They were not in service even then, but they were available in the valley. There was ammunition available with them. But each gun can be dismantled. It needs 9 mule loads to take it up. They were mules, but there was no saddlery. So we used our own men. 95 men, 65 from my regiment, 30 from another. We took up this. We fired 114 rounds into the base of Tololing, where we suspected enemy location to be. The effect obviously would not be as good as firing a Bofors, but this was something we did because the aim of the exercise was to try and do the maximum. Another innovation which worked very well was establishing a dummy gun position. This was my commander's brainchild. It was established, I think, somewhere in the region between Matayan and Dras. And when you looked at it close by, it didn't look very impressive. I remember the wheels were made of large cable drums and things of that nature. But the amount of fire it attracted was large. So it gave us an idea as to, from the lines of fire, as to where the enemy artillery could be located. And it was something for us to work upon. Employment of artillery in this manner was repeated throughout for all major attacks. Synergy between infantry and artillery was achieved. This was achieved through joint recce. I recall CO2 Rajdev and I going for a recce and talking about common names for each objective, each target, each landmark, so that the OP officer, when he talks to me, or when the CO is telling me something, we both know what is being referred to. And that happens only when you do joint recce together. Another example of this synergy, of course, is what General Joshi has just mentioned. That day, when Rocky Knob was being fired upon, when finally we had to fire Bofors, there were two detachments of 108 Medium Regiment, the best one and the second best one. And Commander 56, General All and self, he was standing at the gun end. And I think General Joshi got a hit, I think, on the second or third round. And I remember Brigadier All was so enthused, so he was asking, "Ke isko ek mein aur upar karke should you fire a little more?" But to that effect. So if there is cooperation and if you gel, then you synergize, and the end is more than the sum of the parts. There's one underappreciated fact which I would like to bring to your notice. An infantry battalion has 4 rifle companies, and they go into attack sometime sequentially to deal with any opposition which comes their way. An artillery officer, an OP officer, they are 2 scale to a battalion, and they go in for attack. At times when the tempo of operations is high and you're getting success after success, you have to induct fresh OPs. You're unable to do that because of reasons of acclimatization, because of reasons of availability. As a result, one of my officers, Captain M.K. Singh, waited for 3 attacks before I was able to pull him down. Before ending the experiences proper, there is one action which not very many people know about, which I shall try and relate. This is the fighting in the area of Saddle. Now, Saddle is a small extension from 5100. 5100 our side of the LC, Saddle our side of the LC, 5100 occupied by us, and Saddle to be occupied subsequently. And this is something we tried to do on the night of, I think, 24th, 25th of July. The ceasefire was in place. And this was on our side of the LC. We were very much within our rights to do what we were doing. This was occupied by a platoon. As the platoon commander occupied it, he reported that there was a large enemy camp in the vicinity. And by first light, a neighboring OP at point 5060 reported that the enemy was building up for attack. And he also said that there were 2 helicopters which had discharged men in black dangaris had come down from these helicopters. My OP officer there, Major P.K. Singh, he engaged them with 105s and with mortars. However, the enemy reacted very violently, and he kept firing airburst artillery onto this platoon and onto 5100. And things came to such a pass that I was sitting, rather Commander 56 and I were in some sort of a discussion, and I got a call on my radio set. Both the company commander and the BC spoke to me turn by turn, and they said, "Sir, koi ishara." At 150 meters away. P.K. Singh got to fire down 25. Remember, we told them this brought with pencils, we didn't have computers. Got to fire on 25 meters, 25 meters, so finally I said, "It's 10 meters." This feature was reinforced then by company. It was 13GR, and they took 12 hours of a forced march, and the platoon was reinforced on the first light of 26th of July. As we go back now 25 years, so what do we talk about? I just have 3 or 4 things, and since I'm talking about the role of artillery, I will speak a couple of points about artillery and a couple of points which are more generic. The one issue that was highlighted with great clarity is the centrality of artillery in conventional operations in any types of terrain. Boots on ground means artillery on ground. Both have to happen together. And while our current structures for joint planning exist and have stood the test of time, these are things we have to keep revising constantly, because units change, personalities change, and you can achieve synergy only when you have total understanding. Toward that extent, the requirement for both cross attachments and for affiliation training cannot be underestimated for the close battle. In earlier days too, I mean, I was reading up a bit before this lecture, and there's a book in the USI library. It's the history of the Kumaon Regiment by Major K.C. Praval. It's a famous book, and it talks about the capture of point 9013 by 4 Kumaon on 20th September 1965 across the Tangdar Bulge. Famous battle. And the battalion captured the feature. The enemy ran away. Battalion did suffer casualties, but it was a very successful operation. And it talks also about the devastating effect of own artillery fire. I happen to have a little bit of interest in this because my old battery commander, commanding officer, was the forward observation officer there. So while the exact figures are not mentioned as to how much artillery was fired, giving him the best, giving ourselves the best, those days maybe it was the entire divisional artillery and maybe something extra, between 70 to 80 tubes. Contrast this with what we fired in Tololing, which is what I showed on the slide there. When the rockets themselves have 240 tubes of greater lethality and 114 or 116 guns of the balance 19 batteries, you can see massed firepower in the Indian context has come to stay. And what I say now is, I'm quoting General Kishan, who spoke in a television interview after the war. He said, and I quote, that artillery was employed as a combat arm. Considering multi-domain operations, considering our envisaged force structuring, we need to look at this as part of our doctrine. The centrality of this is being proved by the Russians over and over again. The Americans have now sent the HIMARS, which is now interdicting Russian dumps 200 kilometers beyond the front line. So the sooner we incorporate this and think of our force structures accordingly, the better for us. The last point, again generic, the second last point rather, the Kargil War provided us the impetus, as brought out. We inducted a lot of new technology. We got right from bulletproof jackets, splinter-proof jackets, BPJs, down to frequency hopping radio sets, down to searcher UAVs. We got a whole lot of equipment. That very equipment, and it's progressing today in the modern age, has made our operations far more difficult because of the degree of transparency and the lethality of munition which we all have. Today, while concentrating, building for an attack, and executing the operation was always very difficult, today it is even more so. And that is what we have to respond. Last point in my talk, while the Bofors gun captured the public imagining the number of fields, the cost of the field that rate was the 105 million tons. The regiment was equipped with 105 million light weight guns. We fired 259 rounds with this without a single stoppage. For the information of the House, this gun is 100% indigenous. And this is an example of Atmanirbharta in action. Not very many people talk about it. But the fact is that today, if you have a clear end state in mind, you know the product you want, you put the resources to it with adequate funding and lots of encouragement, you will definitely get what you look for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Wonderful insight into artillery operations and how you executed the fire plans for the brigade. Now, may I request Air Marshal Raghunath Namdeyar, who retired as the CNC Western Air Command and was a fighter pilot during the Kargil operations that flew 25 combat missions, including, the attack on the Tiger Hill post that time. And that was his laser-guided weapon that knocked off that post. To kindly give out Operation Safed Sagar, talk about the air operation.
General Malik, Director General, my fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed an honor to be here on the 25th anniversary of the commemoration of the Kargil conflict. When this conflict began, I, being a test pilot, was in Bangalore, undertaking control or evaluation of the Tejas aircraft. As you're all aware, Tejas is developed in Bangalore by the Aeronautical Development Establishment, ADA. And I was busy in it, and lot of work, lot of discussions, lot of complications, everything was going on. When on the 15th of May, I got a call from my air officer commanding that get back. No reason was given, just get back. Now in the normal days, those days, what used to happen was air travel was a rarity. You could only travel by air on duty if you were ferrying an aircraft, a fighter aircraft or something, which allowed you to get back by air once you drop the aircraft off. Sitting in Bangalore, the first challenge was to get to Gwalior because my boss had told me to get back. And quickly went across to DRDO, where I was working with at that stage, managed to convince them to get me an air passage, and I got back. When got back to Gwalior, what we realized was that Gwalior being a Mirage 2000 base, there were sorties being launched from Gwalior itself to determine the electronic order of battle. What essentially this meant was elite aircrafts were being flown all along the western frontage and in the north to determine what exactly was the enemy disposition of their electronic warfare equipment. And that's where, for me, the Kargil War began. On the 26th of May, when the Kargil War actually started, our Mirage 2000 squadrons were ferried into the war zone. In the sense, we moved out of Gwalior. Some of us went to Ambala, some of us went to Jalandhar, Adampur, that is. Some of us went to Sirsa, and some of us went to Jodhpur. For us, as far as the war was concerned, it was a full-fledged war. There was no Kargil conflict as such, but it was a deployment to take part in a full offensive if it was required against Pakistan. And that's what we call contingency one. And that's exactly what we were doing at that stage.
The different perspective from how I see.
Just 10 minutes of flying from one end to the other. That's all the time it took in a fighter aircraft, which was doing 1,000 kilometers an hour. And therefore, this battlefield is rather very small in the normal sense of the word, especially when you're flying in the air. Simply put, this is how it would look to us, with all the important points and removing most of the terrain which was normally there. But what is interesting is to know this is how it looked from our point of view. That is from the air point of view. The Indian side, the valley floor was about 10,000 feet. Then there was a sharp climb upwards. This is north. You look, this is the LOC. And our terrain was in the Indian side about 10,000 feet. Then a rapid rise to about 16 to 18 to even 20,000 feet at points. And thereafter a gradual slope downwards to the line of control and subsequently to the POK valley, which ran along on an east-west direction with a height of approximately about 14,000 feet, slightly higher than us, but with a gradual slope. Now, if one were to slice this as a salami slice, what you would see is, if this being in the Indian controlled area and this being the Pakistan controlled Kashmir, with LOC running like so and this being north, the hill sort of climbed immediately and thereafter came. Now, if you sort of put in more of these hills, what you realized is the LOC ran like this and these were the hilltops. And the intruders had gotten into these corners here at the lower base of these hill features for establishing the logistics base camp. And they had perched up people on the top of these hilltops to command the area in front and direct artillery fire from their side against our own troops. This is the challenge we faced. And because of the reason that they had Stinger missiles and other such man-portable air defense missiles, our bomb line, that is the area from which we could drop and stay safe, was somewhere akin to this. That means we had, but on many occasions, the requirement to cross the LOC as required. So therefore, we kept saying that we were maintaining this side of the LOC, but from our practical point of view, we always were flying as required to attack these places, especially from this direction. It was inevitable and there was no choice in the matter. It was physics, pure physics. Seen again, another perspective view. This is the Indian side, sharp rise. and thereafter a gradual slope. If Kargil had not been the way it was, and if we were in the attacking force, probably this war would be known as the Gultari War. However, since they did the attack on us, it became a Kargil war for us. This is the sort of aircraft which the Indian Air Force committed. In a normal war, I think probably a squadron of MiG-21s would have been probably given this area. But since this was the only game happening in town, all the concentration of the Indian Air Force was in that sector, in that 160 kilometers. For that, we had 3 squadrons of MiG-21, 1 squadron of MiG-23, BN and MiG-27, and the whole plethora of aircrafts. The first aircrafts shown in saffron were the ones which are operating inside the valley. That is from Srinagar, Avantipur, and other places. And the remaining 3 listing, that is 1 squadron of Mirage 2000, actually 1 flight each, one single MiG-25, and 2 squadrons of Jaguar. They're operating outside the valley. The Jaguars and Mirages from Ambala, and the MiG-25 from Adampur. These are the fighter bombers available with the Indian Air Force at the moment. That is the offensive air power that we had, and these are as listed. MiG-21s, MiG-23 BNs, MiG-27s, Jaguars, and Mirage 2000. The Mirage 2000 fleet, which was ideally suited for this war, as far as the Indian Air Force was concerned, primarily because of its ability to fly and operate at high altitude, however, had certain serious issues. That is, because it was purchased as a sort of a counter to the F-16, it was primarily from the point of view of weapons equipped to fight against the enemy aircraft and not against enemy ground forces. The weapons which had been procured were lacking. And therefore, very few pilots were trained in ground attack. That is the ability to drop bombs and do it accurately, or in laser guided bombs and things like that. Obviously, the ground crew, since they had not practiced arming the aircraft or operating it in this role, did not have any qualifications as such. And also the ground equipment, the role equipment, that is the trolleys, the winches, and all the other paraphernalia which go to make sure that an aircraft is properly loaded and armed, were lacking. And also the number of tools and testers, all of them were deficient. In this 50-day war, since we had no weapon, we managed to qualify all these weapons which are shown on this particular slide in this 50-day war. That is starting from the 26th of May till about the 12th of July. We managed to qualify all these weapons. In the normal course, this would have taken the Indian Air Force for approximately over 2 years. And that is the jugaad which we are talking about here. Now, these are not very complex changes. They are simple changes, but the certification process involved in making sure that safety is ensured, and it takes a lot of time and energy and effort and a lot of analysis. Now, this is where we, since a war was on, we took a lot of shortcuts, we took a lot of chances, and that's how we managed to do all these things in that much of short time, 50 days. And we employed all of them in that war. Some of the milestones. On the 21st of May, 1999, one of our Canberras operating in that sector was hit by a Stinger missile in one of its engines. It managed to land back safely at Srinagar. On the 26th of May, the air campaign started, and we employed our MiG-21s, the MiG-23s, and the MiG-27s in air attacks along with helicopters. On the 27th of May, one MiG-27 crashed because it was operating outside its envelope and firing guns and rockets at an envelope which was not cleared to do by the Russians. In the sense, the gas which the gun threw out, if it got ingested by the engine at those high altitudes, the engine would flame out. And that's exactly what happened. You may recollect Flight Lieutenant Nachiketa ejected because his aircraft flamed out. And Squadron Leader Ajay Ahuja went to try and locate where he had ejected, got shot down by a Stinger missile or something equivalent to that. On the 28th of May, one Mi-17 out of 4 which were deployed against Tololing, carrying out rocket attacks, was hit, and we lost another 4 personnel. At this stage, the Indian Air Force took a strategic pause for roughly about 36 hours because we knew there were some serious issues now in the way we were conducting this war. At this rate of loss, we would have wrote ourselves to the ground in the next 10 days. And therefore, there was a 36 hours pause from air operations. I'm talking of offensive air operations. On the 30th of May, me and my commanding officer, we flew in a Mirage 2000 trainer into Srinagar to get briefed. And we were told that this is now the Mirages are going to get inducted into this war because we had the best capability but lacked sufficient weapons. But we were told we're getting in all the same and we would start using our better capabilities which existed with us at that time. When we landed at Srinagar, what was clearly visible was the fear factor. I mean, people who had taken part and were dropping bombs, they were telling us stories which were unbelievable in terms of at what height they saw they saw Stinger missiles at. Unbelievable. And I think they were probably over dramatic. And actually, these were not factually correct. Logic said that it cannot happen. When a Stinger is fired, it can go only at about to a height of about 10,000 feet from the base of where it is fired. So if you fire it from the hilltop at say 18,000 feet, the highest it can go is 28. You don't expect it at 35. But there were people reporting that they saw Stingers at 35. I mean, it made no sense. Obviously, the tension of war and the fear factor had crept in, and there was this feeling that this is really a hot potato, and we have to probably, take it easy here. By this time, one of the MiG-23 BN squadron COs had been removed from command for cowardice. In the sense, he did not want to go harm's way or put his boys into harm's way. And he sort of said that this is no way to fight. He had been removed from command and had been replaced. And the sort of feeling we got there was this thing was going out of hand. At the same time, we had this feeling that you have to now come in and do something which would sort of change the tide of battle. And that's the feeling we got. The first order of battle, the Mirage 2000 took part was in the attack on 5140. We dropped a plethora of almost about 35 tons of bombs on 5140 coming from the Ladakh side. We used to set course and come on a westerly direction from east to west and drop bombs blind because we were prohibited from going down below 30,000 feet because that was the altitude to which Stingers had been then reported. On the 16th of June, we struck Munto Dalo, which is probably one of the most important targets which we destroyed. I will have a video on this to explain this in more detail. On the 24th of June, we struck Tiger Hill, another video which will probably give you an insight as to what happened. On the 6th of July, we struck a place called Point 4388, far away from where the army was at that point in time, but well within the enemy territory and on the way from Gultari towards Tiger Hill en route. Now, 4388 was not a hill feature or a hilltop. It was actually a valley on the valley floor. And on the 12th of July, 1999, the offensive air campaign ended. Some of the achievements which we set about was, firstly, we established a no-fly zone. How did we do that? By a preponderance of air power. Those of you who have read about Kaiser Tofil and his version of what happened, you would have realized that the Pakistan Air Force did not have a chance. They would have probably we had a technical advantage. We had better weapons as far as air-to-air weapons were concerned, and therefore they had to take a back seat and had to actually go away from Skardu for where they deployed the F-16s at that time. I already spoke of Point 5140, Munto Dalo, Tiger Hill, and 4388. These are our achievements. Typically, what used to happen, we were based here at Adhampur, and another squadron was based at Ambala. The first aircraft to get airborne were from Ambala. The Mirage 2000 from Ambala is to get airborne and head towards what we call a place Point Delta. It's roughly around where the Lausi was. This was regularly being changed to make sure that the enemy was kept in a little bit of confusion as to where we were coming from. At the same time, another 15 minutes after the first aircraft had taken off from Ambala, a second set of aircrafts, which is the strike force carrying the bombs, used to get airborne from a place called Adhampur, just next to Jalandhar. And we used to sort of rendezvous with the group which is coming from Ambala, which had the air defense missiles, the air-to-air BVRs. This point of rendezvous was generally changed somewhere, right, stretching from here up to here. to keep the enemy guessing as to where we were coming from. We did not have secure RTs, and therefore we used to take off on the precise second, and our RVs were all silent, so that the enemy would not be aware that we were heading into that area. And having gathered together all silently with hand signals and such like, we used to get together and head towards Kargil. The total distance involved was in the order of 600 odd kilometers one way. So total about 1200 kilometers was the total journey time. The amount of fuel which we had on the Mira 2000 allowed us to be over Kargil, Dras, or any of that area for roughly about half an hour, which is a tremendous capability. At the same time, our fleets from Srinagar, which was located to the west, used to get airborne with MiG-21s and MiG-29s to provide us air defense cover when we were in this area. And these people had a very short cycle time because of lack of fuel, and therefore they used to do it in 2 waves. So for every one of our waves, the people from Srinagar, that is the MiG-29s and MiG-21s, used to be airborne twice over in 2 waves. This is a place called Munthodalo, and it is somewhere in the Batalik sector. I'll probably have a map to show you where it exactly is. And this is where the Pakistanis have established a logistic base camp in preparation for the effort towards Kargil. Photographs of this base camp started coming to us from very early days. In the beginning, in around the 30th of May, we got a visual photograph taken by the ARC, which is the air arm of the RAW, which showed about 4 or 5 tents with a few people and a mule and a sort of a snow cart or some sort of a snowmobile next to it. This was followed up by another shot about a week later, which showed about 8 or 9, and then it's sort of an exponential sort of a growth in this camp took place. Now, we were all the while being told that this exists, we were being given coordinates. But for us, it was important to use these coordinates to locate it ourselves with our eye, given our system capability, that it was there where it was supposed to be. And therein lied the challenge. We could never find it. The coordinate systems that they were using were probably not matching the coordinate system that we were. We were using WJS-84, they were using some other modified Everest or some other coordinate system, and because of which we were not getting to where they were trying to show us the target was. And this carried on for almost a week and a half. This is a blow-up of the same area. You can see for yourself, by the time we stuck it on the 16th of June, these are increased to 70 tents. Now, what you have here, if you look closely, these are all snow drift which is being piled up to allow these Arctic tents to be pitched here in its backdrop. Winds are generally from west to east in this area, so the snow has been piled up and made into some sort of a shelter to allow the people to sort of stay protected within this. You can also see these track marks in the snow where people were probably trudging to the area where they were doing their latrine and things like that. Point of view of sanitation to keep away from this camp. Now, this is well within Indian territory, and when the video runs, I want you to look at this tent here. Just focus on this tent for a minute, and you will find one or two people walk out of this tent and walk towards this direction. From here, walk this way. Now, how were we dropping bombs here against Munthodalo first specifically? Since Munthodalo was fairly large, it was easy for us to pick it up, and the minimum range for picking it up was about 15 kilometers distance. So it had to be fairly large. It couldn't have been a small bunker or some sort of a small, unless it was illuminated or shown to us separately. And this height was roughly about 15,000 feet above the terrain. And that gave us, once you picked it up, you designated it into the system computer. You told the computer that's where it is. And once you did that, the computer gave you guidance of how to fly to make sure you came to a point from which the bombs would automatically get dropped. This is what is called as the continuously computed release point, CCRP delivery. And once you did the designation, which is here, you leveled out and continue to fly, employing the guidance given by the aircraft automatically. And as it came to the correct place, the bombs got automatically dropped off. You only authorize the delivery and told the system, go ahead and drop. That's how it works. fairly simple to look at, but quite complex in the mathematical solution required to make this happen. Once again, Muntur Dalo is on the extreme right side of this map, very close to Turtuk. And this is the area which we are talking about. Now, what's happening here is that this is on the 16th of June. We are trying to locate Muntur Dalo. We had not yet found it. We knew it existed. We had seen nice photographs of it coming all the way back from Delhi after the ARC processed it, but we couldn't locate it. We just couldn't get a fix on it. At that time, we were always told that, there's fantastic satellite imagery available. Moment war breaks out, the taps will be opened and you will immediately get 1 meter resolution Russian satellites which will be flown into you, and you will have full coverage to see where the world was. Fortunately, these are all probably truths or half-truths, or maybe the war had not been declared, so nothing came to us. All that came was some small images which said 2 tens, 4 tens, 8 tens. Coordinates were wrong, at least as far as we were concerned. And we just couldn't make sense of where they were. So this is an attempt to search and find Muntur Dalo once again. The previous evening, by chance, in our area search, somebody had noticed something which looked like a camp, which looked probably something like Muntur Dalo. So on the 17th, we were doing this, on the 16th, I beg your pardon, we were doing this search once again. So what the pilot is doing is he's using his laser pod and he's scanning around the countryside, trying to pick up if there is a target somewhere. Now, these are all bomb craters which have been dropped in the past. And they are sort of, in the snow. The area is roughly about 14,000 feet. And despite it being June, it is still snowed up. And these are all craters. You can see these are all craters. These are all craters. And the choroidite and the carbon deposit which is being flushed on the countryside is clearly visible. And Muntur Dalo is actually here. Now, why I stop this imagery here to explain to you is that if you notice, see this is Muntur Dalo here. We'll see in much more detail later. But what I want you to remember is that look at this particular mushroom cloud and a L shape, and Muntur Dalo happens to come directly in its path. But the pilot has not yet seen it. He's still hunting around. Remember, this is the 16th in the morning hours. The time is 7:46 in the morning, 16th of June. Dates are here. Here there are 2 bomb craters. Another bomb crater here. And this is the sort of, soot which is being deposited in the snow and is sort of settled there. Here again the same mushroom and the L. And here is Muntur Dalo. Look for the person to come out from this tent here. Did you see him? Now, the moment the pilot picked up the thing, he zoomed backward, got out, because he has to see it in relation to the rest of the world. Because here you're looking at through a straw pipe. So the moment he saw it, you see, he immediately zoomed out, and he's on the lowest zoom, that is 1 star, which is the lowest level of zoom. And you can now see this mushroom and this L. Now, this is the next day after we dropped the bombs on it. We don't have a video of the bombs being dropped, but what I want you to see is the same mushroom cloud and the same area which we are talking about. See the mushroom? And this is the area which we're talking about. Now, you will see all those tents are gone. They're missing. We dropped a 24 250 kg bomb. That is about 6 tons of bombs into this area. And we pulverized all this. To my mind, this is probably the most successful strike in Indian Air Force history, where we wrote off something like about 300 Pakistanis in just one go, in less than a few minutes. You can see every tent in this whole particular lineup has been blown up. This is 7:53 on the next day, 17th of June, where we did the filming to see what exactly we had achieved. All this imagery came from the lightning pod, which is an Israeli pod, which we had purchased in 1997. That is, we had signed the contract for it. But normally what happens is when you sign a contract, it takes roughly about 2 to 3 years to get the system integrated onto the aircraft. And we were in the process of integrating the lightning pod onto the Mirage when the war broke out. The pod, simply put, consists of 2 cameras and a laser gun, that is a CCDIR camera for day and night operation, and a laser gun which operates together. And they are all very ingeniously put together into one single line by the use of prisms and mirrors. And it is possible using this mirror assembly to see all around the world except into itself. So when a point is picked up in space far away, both the laser as well as the visual sight points to the same direction. And the laser, therefore, if fired, fires exactly at the target which you're pointing at. That is at the crosshair. And this is what an LGB looks like. It consists essentially of an Indian bomb, which is called the Mark 11N, manufactured at Ordnance Factory, Kamaria, with an American kit, which consists of a front unit and a tail unit. Both of them together, along with a laser seeker in front, makes a laser-guided bomb. 25 years back, this was high-tech. Today, it's probably too dangerous to use, especially in the plains. In the hills, a laser-guided bomb can still be used because you're still outside the bubble of the Stinger, but you're definitely not safe to do it in the plains. This is how a laser-guided bomb attack looks. And since I'm talking about the attack on Tiger Hill, which is a laser-guided bomb attack, let me give you a quick description of what is happening here. If this is a target here, it's important that the aircraft which is coming in from the left picks up the target by about 20 kilometers. Thereafter, there's a number of switches and system which he has to operate, which has to be done by 15 kilometers. And thereafter, by about 8.5 kilometers from the target, the bomb has to be dropped. And the moment the bomb is dropped, the aircraft throws in a turn rapidly to the left or the right. In this particular case, to the left. And as the bomb is dropped, it continues to go towards the target while the laser is fired at the target to illuminate it and to send its reflection back towards the bomb. And the bomb hunts for that spot and goes in for it. By the time the aircraft is about 6 kilometers away, the bomb hits. This is how it functions. Now, Tiger Hill is what it is. It's extremely elegant looking hill as compared to the other hills around in that same area, at least from the ground. It's spectacular to look at. And what we are going to see is this area in the video which we are talking about. Now, this is Tiger Hill, just the tip of it. And in this, I'd like to point out a few things which probably will be of interest to you. This is the 24th of June. 24th of June, that is 2406. And the time is 7:11 in the morning. We are at the moment in the most highest expansion, that is field 4, which is the largest magnification, that's 20 times. And this is the L which will flash whenever the laser is being fired. And the target, which consisted of about 9 enemy tents, is located right here, not at the very tip or the top, but somewhere in a small sort of a knoll, which is in the southern face of Tiger Hill. At this moment, the aircraft is about 19.9 kilometers. This is the distance here, 18 kilometers away. This is the target here. The crosshair is just next to it. And 7:11 in the morning. The distance is reduced down to 15. And whenever the L is flashing, the pilot is demanding laser to be fired to get the ranging back. You can see the L flash regularly and repeatedly. Now, as you get closer, you can start seeing the tent distinctively. They're in rows of 3 each. And if you look carefully in this area, you will find the shadow of people running across as the range reduces. The bomb is already on its way. Look somewhere here. Look here, this place where the arrow is. There's somebody running now. Now look at this area here where the arrow is pointing. One more shadow you will see crossing, and one more coming up now. The people running on the hilltop because they probably heard the noise of the aircraft. The laser is flashing, as you can see, the L is flashing continuously, and the bomb hits. This is the 24th of June at 7:13 in the morning. Can I take 5 more minutes? 5 minutes. Okay, sure. I'd like to also show you 4388 because that's another interesting thing. And also something which is probably maybe of more interest. Let me look at something, yeah, Stinger. Here is a part of the laser display. I want to show you that when we were dropping bombs at 4388, the enemy was firing back. Look for a Stinger missile fired along this axis. There, saw that? We didn't see it at that time. When we came back and started analyzing the film, that's when we saw it. It was not all hunky-dory. Let me show you another LGB attack which went wrong. Here is what had happened was that since the pod was being under development, it went for a software revision in between when we were in the process of war, and we lost the symbology on the film, not in the aircraft. In the aircraft cockpit, the symbologies, the cross and the date and the time, all was available, but in the recording that disappeared because of a bug. And you can imagine the cross being the very center. And we were attacking some Zangars which are located on the northwest face of Tiger Hill. You'll see the Zangars shortly. Look them here. They're stone piled up into small boxes. As we get closer, you will start seeing the thing. Just imagine a cross in the center. You can see this box. See this box? It's stones being piled together. And you find the bomb come in but not explode. Unfortunately, the fuse did not function. But the bomb is visible. You can see the bomb. This is at night, 3 o'clock in the morning. There, the bomb came in, but it did not explode. Unfortunately, the fuse didn't function. So this is the way it was. I was lucky that since I was a test pilot with the bags of experience and probably at the right place at the right time, out of the 8 LGBs dropped, I dropped 5 of them. And every time it was dropped, the bomb went exactly at the crosshair. Never failed. However, if we had a problem, it would have sort of malfunctioned as the way it did. More than lessons learned, I would like to touch upon lessons not learned. I think the lessons learned have already been really dealt with and probably inculcated. But from the date this war happened till the time I retired, that's 20 years later, we still did not have encrypted RT in air. Even today, to a large extent, our Air Force and the Army and the Navy all operate in unencrypted environment, which is a dead giveaway in the war which we fight, in this world, in this time at least. That is one lesson which we probably did not learn fast enough. The Air Force has been trying for encrypted RT for the last 40 years. We went Atmanirbhar 40 years ago and decided to go in for a system called the INCOM, which was being developed by HAL. 20 years later, when Kargil took place, INCOM was nowhere in the scene and had been probably dropped out of the mind space of most of us because it was not functioning. And from then till now, the procurement process has made sure And I hold myself responsible because for 2 years of these 20 years, I was in a place where I had a chance to do a lot of procurement action on this particular front. I think we were not as good as what we want to be. At that point in time in Kargil, we had a capability which made sure the Pakistan Air Force sat at home. By 2019, when Balakot happened, we had lost that capability to make them sit at home. The Indian Air Force, and I'm sure the Army and the Navy to a large extent, is a technical branch to a large extent. We have to have technical capability in excess of what the enemy has. We can have all the sort of honor and glory and courage and everything else. But if you do not have technical capability, you are in trouble. And that's what, to my mind, is the lesson which we should learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Wonderful insight into the air operations. And now may I request Vice Admiral Satish Soni to tell us something about the role of the Navy Operation Talwar during Operation Vijay.
एक है एक स्लाइड है जनरल मलिक सर जनरल बीके शर्मा
They'll have to speak a little closer to the mic.
It is indeed a pleasure, a privilege, honor to stand here, not as much to speak about what the Navy did, but more to listen to your stories and pay a tribute to you. We bask in your glory as we did 25 years back. So a big salute to all you gentlemen who contributed to these operations. I shall speak about the Navy. I was, during this time, I was the NA to the Chief of the Naval Staff. And, you attend briefings and you can make some papers. So I got a ringside view of what was happening. And I discussed with Admiral Bangara, who was our ACNS IVOPS at that time, Admiral Bedi, who was the Chief of Staff in the Western Naval Command, Admiral Suresh, who was a young commander and he's still in service, to try and piece together some inputs of what the Navy contributed and what the Navy did. And of course, General Malik is here to correct me because I'm sure that he also had as much of a ringside view. So the directions to the Navy was strategic deterrence, that the conflict should not spill over to the sea, and the Pak Navy or anyone else should not indulge in any adventurism at sea, and we should avoid a conflict. So the aim became to defend our assets from the sea, to prepare for a war in case something happens, and apply pressure on the Pak Navy, and in turn that the pressure, if it can be transmitted to the army and the nation. Now, how exactly a war at sea is fought and what are the aims of the navies in case there is a conflict? One is that we like to interdict trade to affect the economy, so that the nation, the opposing nation, comes under pressure. Then there is a desire to inflict as much damage to the naval units, whether it is shore-based surveillance aircraft or ships at sea or submarines, so that they are not able to interfere, with our operations. You would have heard of maritime exclusion zones and the concept of blockade. That becomes very important in naval warfare. We try and, in defending our territory, the first thing you can expect the Navy to do is to draw out a maritime exclusion zone
to make coordinates to announce that this is a maritime exclusion zone. Uh, Please, we give you 24 or 48 hours. Please move out of this, and if you remain in this, then you would be considered an enemy. And then, we would have the right to engage. So it is essentially a defensive kind of an initiative. And whether it was the Falklands, where both the parties claimed those islands and drew out maritime exclusion zones around the Falkland Islands, or it is presently in the Black Sea, where in the Sea of Azov, and the Russians declared a maritime exclusion zone so that nobody enters. Uh, our aim is to draw out, our aim would be to a maritime exclusion zone along, say, the western coast or the eastern coast or of the Indian peninsula, and then, guard this. The other concept is if you the concept of the other nation, declare a blockade. It is somewhat a legal terminology also, in the sense that a nation can't declare blockade unless it is capable, so that there is no bias against a particular, company or somebody else or nation with this nation. So we could have declared blockade against, announced a declared blockade against Pakistani coast, people again 48 hours for people to leave the coastline on the ports, and then interdict any merchant vessel which is trying to get into this. None of this happened because we had a defensive posture. Made these coordinates, and we decided instead of blockade, which is offensive, declare a maritime exclusion zone or Pakistan and the Indian coast. So that now, never really announced that because it was an offensive, posture. Now, when General Malik actually returned India, Admiral Sushil Kumar, he was the chairman, chiefs of staff committee, and once this knowledge, immediately he started wondering, this is going into something big, and the Navy is essentially to react. All operational ships in the Navy normally they they may have one missile, two missiles, they may not have the complete Russians need to be ships. But he immediately, on the day this was told to him, told the Eastern Fleet that you get prepared to join the Western Fleet because you may be required. Because they know that not only will the ships take some time to get prepared, so they have to Sri Lanka and Raj, and maybe it will take 8 days to actually be in a position to contribute. And on the day that this right. And whether we were able to have at least 40 ships, including the small ones which are available, Western Fleet, some of these smaller boats and all that were but the others were at sea or in Bombay. Our MR and LRMP capability was limited. We had the old Russian aircraft and the IL-30 aircraft, which were quite frankly not very capable of much. In fact, the Pakistan Navy in their submarine fleet and in the MR capability were a little better. So, and Virat, which was the aircraft carrier, was in refit. So Virat was not available. We had the Sea Harrier aircraft which were around, but they could not participate in combat. So the submarines, as can be expected, were forward deployed. The
General of Shipping was asked to reroute all our merchant ships so that they don't have to traverse the Pakistan coast. And um, all available server ships and the training ships, they were converted into hospital ships and prepared to participate in action. The merchant ship, the Pakistan merchant ships started to get escorted, along the coast from the Gulf of Hormuz to Karachi. What was particularly in these operations, which was at the top of Sushil Kumar's mind, was that what if one of submarines or ships or one of the harbors in Bombay is attacked by the Pakistan Navy in a surprise attack? We can't have a limited area of operation. Navies typically are across the oceans. So he, in fact, was, I don't know whether he raised it at CCS, the Prime Minister in person, but he conveyed or wanted to convey that if there is an attack on a Pakistani, on Indian naval ship, submarine in harbor, Indian Navy will not be able to hold and limit its operations, we will sort of attack in full go. So the Western Naval Command had the rules of engagement prepared, the op instructions were issued, and all the ships were ready to go. Sometimes the leaders, this is the area of operations. If you, I'm sure you can recognize this as I'm speaking. But if you see the Gulf and Porbandar and that is our ships were from Bombay, the ships were at sea by Makran coast. That was where the submarines were deployed. Now, the leading personality matters a lot. And the chief personality, as General Malik, you would know, was of creating perceptions. He was a bit of what you call a showman. He liked to dress up, his, beard or whatever. Now, that's what he implemented in battle. He tried to create a perception in the minds of the Navy. The Indian Navy was very powerful. That we were, we had solved all our problems and we were much superior to them. We were superior to them. We had things in our armor. So what did we do? We got rid of the image of the a container ship and marked Sea Harrier and um, the image as if the Sea Harriers, Indian Naval Sea Harriers, are operating from merchant ships because it is a V-stall capability. And he transferred this image was transferred to a Gulf newspaper. It was published there and with the caption that Indian naval harriers are operating off container ships off the Pakistani coast. Then the Eastern Fleet, from the east to the west, from the bridge in Kochi, he he had a photograph taken of the entire Eastern Fleet on the jetty in Cochin, and again that image was published in a Gulf news saying that the Eastern Fleet has been deployed. So there is no secrecy in this. In fact, an exaggeration that Navy building up. Now, P140 did not have capability. The capability was somewhat limited. So we took a picture of the which is a geometry. Again, the same thing, a very great picture taken in the Rajali airfield, and again transferred to various channels to reach the Pakistani coast. So, the loading the missile, Eagle missile, and again given Now, with all those capabilities, the Indian Navy is much more than we actually are here. And, Pakistan naval ships specifically that they are not close the Indian ships to 50 kilometers. They all wanted to building and Karachi was evacuated. All their assets were shifted westwards to Chennai, including the PPC-9 aircraft, which was actually a lot more superior in the capability than ours. The other, which was a major effort which was made, was that during that time, email had come into being, but they were not. So, within days, the Indian Navy was able to devise a scheme. Because for us, communication with the teams and the embassies mattered a lot in this whole concept of information warfare. So, the scheme which was developed started by IT and the dongle and the CD were flown to all the devices in warfare in different directions, giving credence to the efforts the Indian Navy was making. Another way to create that were more solid, they were actually was that sent to Oman an evacuation of an injured sailor from a submarine in Muscat. So, the sailor never, submarine, no sailor, no evacuation. But the message around giving that Indian naval submarine as far uh, as the Gulf. So some of the cooperation which we had, which we were Donias, which were fitted with and these IW Donias, information warfare Donias, what we used to call them. The squadron that was deployed in the Ladakh sector that we could DF the transmissions from the radar stations. Similarly, for the RT, accurate positioning is important, and our naval surveillance DGDPR system by which they could give better thing than available elsewhere in the country. So deployed. Because that satellite data, which Navy had contracted for at that time, we had some contracts and they came, that came in handy. I'm not too sure how much of that is correct. No, okay. Now, the Navy's aims, whatever the aim of the Navy was, that was to deter conflict. So that was achieved. There was not an issue which is at sea. I am given to understand that the tri-service cooperation was very good at the working level with the Air Marshal, Air Chief Marshal Tyagi and General Vij and Bangara at that time working closely. No. That's what but I'm saying at the junior level, these ops team, Bangala tells me that, they used to meet every day and there was never a problem, in the way that they look. And, international played a very big role. And it is playing as in the wars over here today. I think one thing which we must notice is that 25 years back, the area of operations or the area at sea was limited to the Arabian Sea, Makaran coast, and the western coast. But in future wars, it is not going to be the entire Indian Ocean. It is going to be Bengal, and the dominance which the Indian Navy had is no more going to be there. We are going to have a much stronger Pakistan Navy. We are going to have a much stronger Navy operating in the Indian Ocean, and we are going to have a stronger collusion between the Indian Navy has somehow lived this perception that we are the dominant Navy, and we have been, even in our development plans, we are what you call, we have been developing all around, whether it is aircraft carriers or it is submarines or having a SSBN capability. But the money always is limited, and we have to decide as to where we put that money in, especially as the threat increases. And to my mind, there is one area in which we have not been investing in too much, and that is the capability to field nuclear submarines, which have a staying capability for a longer duration at sea. We have right now only conventional submarines. We used to have one nuclear submarine which we had taken on leaves from from Russia, and we got these Chakra submarines, and presently we have none. And if you see in AUKUS, the focus is on nuclear submarines, and Australia is going to acquire three by the early 2030s, and they have an option clause for that makes it five, and then they acquire eight AUKUS submarines. So by 2040, 45, or maybe at latest by 20, much smaller in size, is much less capability on the table, would have 13 nuclear submarines, and nuclear submarines are extremely important if you want to get an opposing force, which might comprise aircraft carriers. In the Indian Navy, no such program. So once you add the Navy, the assessment capability that we have, that is, for as a part of sea like that, but we must have some SSN programs. So thank you so much. As I said, Navy. Thank you.
Part of our brigade. Try to depict that this way
Hmm.
Pakistani seaports. But नहीं, काफी है. And ultimately, of course, that never happened, but we did take that, and these boys were later on. They were taken to Goa and
Mangalore beaches. Information warfare. One of the information warfare, this thing.
But these boys were actually taken from
Yes.
Nicobar.
Yeah.
I thought I must add that also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. And I'm sure all of you will agree that we've been extremely fortunate to have views of such eminent panelists, and of course, General Malik here, the chief at that time. So may I now request the audience, anybody has any questions, please, Sir, General Cardozo has a question.
Gadbir,
Sir.
since I have to leave at 1 o'clock,
Sir.
if there's any question in the next 5 minutes, if I can be permitted to answer that
Sir, General Cardozo.
to me, okay. He was 1 year senior to me in my squadron in NDA.
John Nick, we remember very clearly the world will fight with what we have. Why did you say that? We understand what you mean, but what was the background to this?
This was in a press conference, and somebody, I'm giving you the whole story, and one of the journalists, well-known journalist, he asked me this question. He said, look, you've been complaining about non-availability of weapons and other things. Now that the war is on, how are you going to fight? So when he asked me this question, I just said that we shall fight with whatever we have. I mean, we all know that at the last minute, you cannot get these weapons and all. But I also must add with something more to it. And that is that after 2 days, the Prime Minister asked me, and he said, General Malik, you gave that answer Apparently, some people must have gone and told him that. And तो वो क्या उचित था? He asked me that. And I said, this is how it happened. And then I also told him, I said, sir, as a soldier, I cannot bluff the people. The fact is that we are short of weapons equipment. And therefore, I had to say that only. And there was nothing else. So after that, of course, we kept quiet. But that is the fact. As a soldier, you can't tell lies to your own audience because, if I had said something different and said, spoken not so truth, then I told him also, I said that my own clientele, my own people, they will stop trusting me in the battle. I can't afford to do that.
And you know, at that time, all of us were told that you could not cross the line of control. I would like to know what was the background to, not to know the background, we know the background because we didn't want to escalate the war. But our attitude from independence onwards has been passive. We are a non-violent country, a very peaceful country. We want brownie points with the UN. This is all nonsense. So we need to inject a policy of instant defense and offense in the minds of the politicians and the bureaucrats who have no idea about warfare. So, and what Admiral Ronnie said, information warfare made the Prime Minister of Pakistan scurry to the United States, to Bill Clinton, to say, please ask for the ceasefire. Why? So therefore, there is a dichotomy between not crossing the ceasefire and scaring the Pakistan. What is this all about?
See, initially when this conference took place on 24th of May, when I had given a presentation to the cabinet and the Prime Minister and other CCS members were there. And before that, I must also tell you that the CCS had refused to make use of the Air Force in a meeting which had been held about a few days earlier. So when they said at that time, the situation was that these are all jihadis. Prominently, everybody was telling us that these are jihadis. And the second thing was, there is no doubt about it that there was this nuclear factor which doesn't affect the military men as much as it affects the politician. I must tell you that. So my own feeling is that these two things were in their mind. So when I finished and I told him, I said, we will call this Operation Vijay and, try to reassure the people that final word was spoken by Brijesh Mishra. He said, but you will not cross the line of control. Now, apparently, the cabinet, the CCS had already decided on that. So he said that you and Prime Minister was sitting there, so was the External Affairs Minister, and he said, you will not cross the line of control. At that time, I must say that we did not challenge that statement because the situation was not very clear. But then I have narrated the story after 3-4 days, when again he said, you will not cross the line of control. Then I confronted the Prime Minister and I told him, I said, suppose it's happening, we will have to take action. We will have to cross the border. And that is how we prepared ourselves also. But the point is that this term of reference was totally political. Military would not, we would have liked to, if we were fully, we would have probably sought some more time and some more resources, things of nature. But then it came as a, you can say, a term of reference for us. And subsequently, we did not really have the need to go across and escalate the thing because after Tololing, we never failed in our capture of the territories. And I totally subscribe to you that the correct action at both the military level as well as at the political level to remain proactive. And to some extent, that policy at the political level seems to have changed also. But these are the circumstances under which we had to follow that.
So, yes.
General Malik, sir.
So the last question for you.
Last question, sir. One moment, sir, please. I know you have already explained why we didn't cross the line of control, and that day we could see the Pakis were running in panic across the line of controls. And we thought of that's an opportunity which we
You
should
must say where you were
exploit.
during Kargil.
But thank you, sir. In Batalik, sir, 5300 at that time, sir. Sir, it's only a suggestion more than a question that yes, the Kargil war was, from Daras to so and so, but also Batalik, sir. It was a huge sector stretching from, let's say, China Nala all the way to Chorbatla. So in another session, whenever we may have some discussion on the Batalik sector, which has its own, issues.
This question is you decide not at me. But there is no doubt that because of the kind of terrain and total lack of communication, there is no doubt. Good work done by 70 Brigade under Brigadier Devinder Singh. That somehow has not got as highlighted as General Mohinder Puri's divisional work in craft and
That time, sir.
No, but
Now I see it here, it occurs,
now
you know.
that that sector is also opened up, we have better road communication, etc. There's first memorial which has come up at Kalubar.
Yes, yes, sir.
And I hope whatever you are saying will be taken by the US side. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you
it's
very
been a
much, sir.
pleasure here. Thank you. Thank you. So. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Is there any other question from the audience, sir, please?
Question.
Please. One question, sir. After that, give others also.
Question at a time, sir. Sir, two issues regarding artillery, sir. They won the battle for us. I can say that without any caveats, sir. But are we able today, forget about 25 years back, but today, what are the major changes that will see the similar battle being fought with, let's say, much more, much better? That's what we would like to know. For example, they're saying we've inducted this, or, better capability to assess where the enemy is across, which we couldn't attack him. So these kind of things is what I'm looking at, sir.
Basically, today also Ukraine has shown the dominance of RT, but with very high precision
What about
weapons.
us? Question is, Ukraine RT, yes, but what about us?
Right. This is it. Yes, sir.
Amol, thank you for your question. Thank you, Dan. This is something,
From me.
this is something we all talk about. The point which I was making, one of my last points was how difficult it is to prosecute operations today in the environment we are in. And this is a common challenge for all of us. Now, your question is specific to artillery. Purely as far as equipment is concerned, there has been exponential increase in terms of long range vectors. Now, the mindset of close support cannon artillery vis-a-vis the mindset of using artillery at the operational level, vis-a-vis of using firepower at the strategic level, how to reconcile these things and form an operational philosophy. I'm sure it's being done somewhere. I'm not like we are all retired, but I presume that this is what is being thought of and carried out.
Sir.
I have a question for General Puri, sir. While watching the live telecast on the national channels, I saw a journalist announcing at 2:30 in the morning that at 5:30 the army is going to attack this post. And the camera obligingly showed the post also where the artillery shelling was going on. So this was one instance where 3 hours before the journalist is announced. The second case, she is telling, quickly note down, this 105 guns and Bofors have started firing. And the firing is going on right behind her. So was there any monitoring going on about the media? Yeah, definitely there was monitoring going on. But then the media, our policy towards the media was not very clearly defined. When the operation started, we said there will be no media presence over here. Then within a week, we realized that that's not the way forward. We need to what is happening. We need to let the media have access. Now, give media the access. It's very difficult to control them then. I think you can't have, you can't control the media then. I mean, you can't have people, soldiers who are fighting a war to start monitoring where is so-and-so journalist, where is so-and-so journalist. There was a lot of talk about attack on Tiger Hill, what you mentioned basically. When the attack on Tiger Hill was going on, Varkha Dutt, she was, showing this. Now, this was nobody knew about it. Even the chief at that time, he didn't know that we were going into Tiger Hill that night. It was only between the corps commander and myself. And when he saw this operation on the TV, he rang up. He said, "What is this going on?" Very rightly true. He said, "What is this going on?" And so then we had to get hold of, send a patrol to find out Barkha Dutt and bring her back into a bunker and say, "Bhaiya, tum ab chupchap baitho yahan pe." But these are the problems which you face at night. Your concentration is not on what is happening on the TV. Your concentration is how the operation is developing, how the operation, you're monitoring that aspect, which is more important to your immediate technical. That's why. Then there was also talk that, this TV was, I mean, what was being projected was being picked up by the Pakistanis and they were sort of counter bombarding us. I think that was a bit far-fetched. We ourselves were finding it very difficult, to place our artillery because of the limitations of terrain. Or for them to pick up this and then carry out CB on that was a bit difficult. But definitely the point about the presence of media was very much.
I have a question for you.
If I may add, sir, since people on the ground, instructions from the Mandupuri were that the amount of journalists that were floating there was too much. It says anybody can interact with anybody as long as you are not saying anything negative about your troops, about the kind of operation that you have done. As long as you are projecting the bravery and explaining the right manner, there were no restrictions at all. And also, since we actually, Barkha Dutt interacted with us, she was, after we just finished 5140, she came to us. What I want to say is that after she took the interview, next day she put those cassettes in a flight, in a chopper, which went down to Srinagar, then went down to Delhi. That time no direct telecast was happening. So I don't know where, this has got triggered that, she was even live telecast of the Tiger Hill. There was no live telecast happening anywhere.
But that's, General Malik did bring me up because I wish he was here when this question was raised by you. But nevertheless, that's not the point. The point is that the media has to be given a certain amount of access so that the country comes to know what is happening. What General Joshi is saying, that no negative aspects. You don't want the country to know, okay, the army is in a bad state at that time. It's most demoralizing. We couldn't capture Tololing for 3 weeks. And the impact it had on the media, all sorts of stories were coming out. That what is the army doing? What is this happening over here? And till we captured Tololing, then of course the truth prevailed. But till that time, all negativism was there in the air. So you want to avoid these things that are.
I think we also need to understand that the media wants to get points for broadcasting news on time. What happened in 2611, when reporters were monitoring and broadcasting, when they found what is happening in Kargil Hotel, that's related to Pakistan and to the terrorists. So the media needs to be controlled. And the media must be told, this, you are compromising future operations. My question to you is, for the Kargil operations, we understand that you have made the enemy commander in a war game and you had forecasted exactly what happened subsequently. Is that true?
Yes, sir, it is. I was the enemy commander. I was the Pak commander for that particular war game. And we had a Pakistan brigade which was available to me for Ladakh sector. So we had occupied some of these posts, which were, which were tactically important to the Indians. We had occupied these posts. But sir, war games basically are to validate your defensive plans. And nobody is worried about, if you come up with something different, how to sort of counter that. So this area, I had captured, I had put the troops on Tiger Head. I had put the troops on Tolo Lake. But within 15 minutes, the control said, "Ye to clear ho gaya."
No,
These are things which happen. I mean,
no, but that's not the issue. The issue is like you take, for instance, the 1965 war. The attack on Cham was gamed in 1956, in 1958. No action was taken when the war actually took place. What I'm trying to say is in Kargil, the same thing happened.
yeah,
And after that, we forget about it.
these are error of judgments which are there. And I think the point is that, yeah, these are errors of judgment. The point is that these drawbacks have taken place, but the fact is that we came out of it. That is more important, I think. It's yeah, that's what I'm saying. But so but the aim of that war game was to validate your defense plan. So let's, but so nobody expected anything east of Zujila. As an army, we never expected anything east of Zujila, which is a fact. I mean, were there any plans that the enemy is going to come and come east of Zujila because of the terrain configuration, because of the uh, interconnectivity of communications? There were no strategic roads on either side, which would give you a advantage in case at the end of the war you had seized some territory. It was totally barren land, and we were. What did we have? We had a brigade in Siachen, which was looking after Siachen. We had a Kargil brigade in Kargil, which at one stage, when you were the G1, it was an independent brigade. It was directly under the Corps. That independent part we got rid of that and became a part of 3DIV. So there was nothing there. The resources, like Satish is saying, were limited at that time. But the point, I think, is well taken, sir. I don't want to talk anything more about it.
My last question is to anybody who can answer. When Lieutenant Kalia and 5 soldiers, they were tortured, the eyes were gouged out, 5 parts was cut off. To say this would happen to you if you. Now, the air went of record this not happen. Does the government this to the armed forces and say this did not happen when it actually had happened? Why are we
I think this point is very valid. It was taken up, I think, at the highest level by the army. And there are various sort of discussions, panel discussions, TV shows, which have brought out the sort of torture which this young officer had gone through and the way his body was mutilated and returned to us. I don't know, I wonder if you can, Ambassador, talk about what is the convention for this, because I think there is some convention in the United Nations that these things will not be brought up or, works towards it. I'm not very sure, so I'll ask your indulgence in that.
No, General, you are right. There is, I mean, now that General Cardozo raised it, this issue was not discussed widely within MEA. MEA didn't have any standard operating procedures on how to respond. But you're right, there is a convention, the Geneva Conventions on War. One part of MEA is fully aware of that. Even today, we talk of international humanitarian law. Now it's become much more focused because of our peacekeepers. And there's an awareness of international humanitarian law. But in that particular case, the spokesman went on his own and took a line which was linked with the Lahore visit and the interest in keeping the Pakistan, United States sort of framework on board in a diplomatic sense, because eventually it was Nawaz Sharif who had to eat cake at the 4th of July in America. So I think that played in. But I agree with what General Kargil said. In fact, even today, there's no limitation. Even today, if there's a political will, this can be raised.
Even presently, these things are happening.
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment, sir. It's not a question, but for all of us to realize the statement of General Malik that we'll fight with what we have has already been explained by him, but I think it has continued to reverberate in our environment for quite long, and it gets quoted even now. It happened in Kargil because we were surprised. But 20 years down the line, we were again surprised at Galwan, and the situation remains the same. I'd like to point out two things because there are people sitting here who must, I'm sure that they're aware of it. I was in the PP Directorate in 2003-04. At that particular time, the Chinese threat was listed as low level in 2009, high level in 2012, and medium level in this thing, and 2017 was the high level. I got to know a few years down the line that that high level threat has been postponed from 2017 to 2022 in our perspective planning. Got to know a few years later while I was still in service that that threat has been postponed to 2027. Based on what? What intelligence? What threat level? I think the Chinese have never looked at on their developmental issues or the PLA, and that thing continues to happen. Now that we have even got surprised. So I am rather flabbergasted that who is not understanding? Is the political leadership not understanding, or are we weak-kneed that we are not able to put across our things to the hierarchy that look, this is when General Malik makes a statement, we'll fight what we have. The caveat also should be with the present leadership to say that yes, we will fight with what we have because that's a soldier's duty. It must also come out with a second line that this is what I can do for you and not beyond this. Make up your mind what do you want to do. And therefore that will connect. So whether it connects the Home Ministry, whether it connects the External Affairs Ministry, and everybody will come into the loop only when the second statement is made, that this is what I can do. If the statement continues to be that we will continue to do with what we have, I think we will always get the bad side of things. Thank you.
Since it's a comment, I don't think it requires an answer. Oh, that's what I said.
Any serving officers? Let's have some of your views.
Sir, please. Since we are all very experienced and we've seen a lot of, all this, what I may request is that if most of the panelists or all the panelists could just say 2 or 3 things which we can do better in the next war, or what we have been able to implement to make it better in the next wars. It's very important for us all to know, look, things have improved, things are improving. These are the things which have gone forward. It might take a little bit of that questions, let's say.
While the panelists may kindly sort of respond to what suggestion is made, but since we have young officers here who are going to be the future custodians of, the national sovereignty and territorial integrity, sir, one point that I felt, and I've been a mountaineer throughout my life, and I've had a couple of tenures and a lot of top secret missions. I find that, well, there is still a disconnect between the situation on ground and the understanding of the higher headquarters. And I have seen that in Kargil, barring maybe people like you who understood and who gave that latitude to the battalion commanders to postpone the attacks. But there were a number of instances there again when people were actually pumped into the battles. Probably if some kind of a sort of heed was given to their advice to postpone attack by 2 days, 3 days, probably maybe the situation would have been different. So this malaise still needs to be addressed in our case. I think with this technology and everything now, I think the distance between the situation on ground and the understanding of the higher headquarters is increasing, sir. Second thing is, suppose we had to, on hindsight, I'm saying, if we had to fight Kargil war differently, purely as a professional military advice and not get so much dictated by don't cross the LC and all. There was a plan to probably launch para brigade, 50 para brigade in Gurzal Pass. And suppose we had launched that brigade and they had nothing there. Probably it would have cut their entire Gultari axis from there. And suppose you had attacked Manthodolo on the other side and gone for infiltration and cut off to the Mashko Valley his routes of ingress. Probably the war would have been postponed by another 1.5 months. But would the outcomes be different? I'm just raising these issues because we have these officers here. Third thing I feel that 8 Mountain Dew was a very potent offensive formations. Just because some of these people came and we ruled them back, was there a need to actually deploy 8 Mountain Dew in perpetuity in a defensive role? Or we could have made do with maybe one formation and have still the very aggressive content of this division intact. And the last thing is, while we put all our eggs in one basket to score a victory in Kargil War, we know how sort of Bofor guns were moved from all over and things like that. Should Pakistanis, the Chinese had opened another front, were we in a state of strategic military imbalance? These are the issues that I thought I'll flag, and we have very senior officers here. All of them have been theater commanders and deputy chief level officers. If somebody wants to address, welcome. Otherwise, we could sort of proceed.
With regard to what you raised, the situation in Ladakh has changed completely post 1999.
Yes.
Post 99, the situation in Ladakh has changed completely. You know, starting with raising of the 14 Corps, looking after entire Ladakh, and the area which was held 160-70 kilometers, we talked about on the western front, western Ladakh, which was held by just a brigade and a BSF battalion, now being held by a division. We have got a reserved brigade as well, which is now available in Eastern Ladakh. The amount of force multipliers, you know, artillery, Smerch, Pinaka, especially post 2020, what happened in Eastern Ladakh, have been inducted into the area. You know, the amount of electro-optical surveillance systems, UAVs, drones, cameras with live feeds coming right down to battalion, even to the div headquarters from all these cameras along the LC have now been put in place. The amount of infrastructure that has come in, you know, over a period of time, and all the army commander, and slowly, I mean, gradually we've been doing it, but a large number of posts have now been connected with initially off tracks and then blacktop and all that. So there's no way that you know, a Kargil-like situation can happen again, like I mentioned when I spoke. And things are changing. Things have changed. Maybe the pace of the way we wanted did not happen, but there is lots more that's happened, and it's under control.
Yeah, what was the first point which you raised, BK?
Still, besides being myself an infantry guy, we have the second generation officers still there. Still, there is a disconnect, you know, the situation on ground and the understanding and the perceptions at the higher end.
I think
that empathy.
I think this is more of a personality issue than anything else.
you have people, you have commanders who interact beautifully with the men, and you have commanders who don't act beautifully with the men. So the idea, I think this is more of a personality issue than as a systematic or a systems issue, where you have commanders who can sort of not be friendly but not familiar with the men. You have a better situation where the doors are open, you can, conversation can go both ways. It's not that your word is the law. In today's environment, I'll tell you from my own experience, I didn't issue a single instruction in writing. But I said, okay, whatever happens, the work will stop at a certain level. So you have to interact, you have to give the confidence to the men. There were battalions which failed in operations and they were given a second chance to restore their name. I can name those battalions to you. His battalion, 13 Jack, was nowhere near a battalion which finally turned out to be what it was when they were in the valley because of poor leadership. Can you imagine the brigade commander's Jonga was blown off with an IID 150 yards from the battalion headquarters in Sopor? Am I right? So what the battalion was and what the battalion transport because of leadership is something which brings me to the point of how a leader responds or acts or, deals with the subordinates. So it's more of a personality issue than anything else. 18 Grenadiers, they did their first 3 weeks are best forgotten. But then they restored their honor by capturing Tiger Hill. So, it depends on how you tackle a problem. You can sack the CO, that's the simplest way to resolve a problem. But that doesn't answer the question. It doesn't resolve the issue. I hope that point is. So let me just clarify his two of the other points also. Very interesting points he made. He said about 8 div, why did we waste a division over there? You see, the terms of reference of the government are there will be no loss of territory. We are all very familiar with that. We've been hearing it since the time we got our commission. That there will be no loss. I fully concede your point that 8 division should have not been deployed. It should have been kept as a reserve, as an alpine division, which could have responded to any offensive operation. You could have got the RR to take over these defensive positions. You have enough of RR battalions. Never be. Much we are today. I agree with you what you're saying. And sir, he's got another third. Let me answer all this. What kind of big apple?
So I was saying, could we have fought this war through military?
Okay, now, that's a question which is, I think, best left to the people who are now in uniform for them to decide. But that time, like General Malik very rightly said, in terms of reference were very clear. I mean, you can't fight the political system. I mean, if the country says there'll be no transgression of the line of control, so be it. For a soldier, you have to accept that. What is a democracy? That is a democracy that the political guy can talk the rules for you.
No, I think we need to go a little further. I'd like to answer what General Sharma said, what General Joshi said, what they said. The issue is, I'll make a quote. An army of sheep led by a lion will be far better than an army of lions led by a sheep. Therefore, what you said about leadership is absolutely 100% correct. The issue is, as far as the government is concerned, does it have any vision? China has a vision for the next 100 years. You are only reacting, whether it is Kargil, whether it is 65, we are only reacting. We have no vision whatsoever. I asked this of the defense minister, Anthony, time ago. And he said, you people, you all don't have any vision yourself. I said, how can the military have a vision when your country doesn't have a vision? Military can only have its vision, draw its vision from what the country's vision is. But we don't have a vision. So this mindset has to change. Who will change it? We are absolutely passive. I don't know what we are trying to project ourselves as some saintly country which has got no, we don't want to do, we were very holy guys. Nonsense. So I don't know what needs to be said. Perhaps Ambassador will like to say, no? But this is the question, the issue is
Question is very rightly put, but it's the wrong audience.
okay, thank you.
Please.
Hi everyone, I'm Mrs. Yadav from General Yadav. I have to just quote one thing. When my children got admitted in Noida APS, going for RR command, the principal there, Mahesh Prasad, he had the, so he changed the logo, or what you say, learn to obey. He changed it into learn to question. And that got stuck in my mind. I said, yes, that's the thing. Because we here sitting here, nobody, in spite of saying, nobody question anything. You have to speak up. You are the next generation. Why are you just sitting quiet? Have questions? You are not even, I don't know why you people are so mum. Come, answer, they are there, sitting there. Learn to question. Because yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. What he just said, yes, no, you have to speak up. What will happen? You will not get your satisfied answer. At least you will get your say. People will hear something from you. Am I right? Nodding, nodding, nodding. Speak up. So learn, yes, obeying is important in army, but learn to question as well. That is important. I hope I
Well said.
Well said.
Satish Soni, you just mentioned, hey, ma'am, you become a motivator speaker. Remember? So, I've started my job. Thanks.
Back to your motivation and make a small comment. I think at a macro level, we need to give some serious thoughts. Now take the performance of Indian Army. Let's start from 47, 48. We did very well, 47, 48 to start with, till we were stopped by uh, the the senior most officer, who was a British officer, and who was actually fighting both sides and doing a wargaming both sides, who made the other guy surrender on the other side and ensured that the POK remains on the other side and they can include Pakistan into CETO, CENTO and continue with their containment of USSR. So that's, I think as an army, we did a very good job, but apparently the political things were not in our hand. We moved to the next one. And when we moved thereafter to 62, the political hierarchy, whatever we can say, the fact is we did not convince the political hierarchy in a manner which should have been, and somebody should have thumped the table. Because humiliation thereafter is still in the psyche of many, and it is also there a psyche of supremacy in case of Chinese. Now, thereafter, let's take the 71 operation. The political hierarchy as well as the military hierarchy, they were almost on the same grade. The military hierarchy did put its foot down to delay it by 6 months. He did ask for certain things, and he did not succumb to pressure. And therefore, we saw the results absolutely different. Now, as we go along, thereafter, I think 65 we did well. The same army, which did so badly in 62, also did very well in 65. So therefore, there is a very serious issue of perhaps getting the political hierarchy. I mean, standing up to political hierarchy is extremely important. Today we see again a situation wherein 2, 3 years of, so many years of standoff, and still ITBP is not under the operational control of the army. And it has become an accepted thing. Similarly, we were less than 2% of GDP in 1962. We know the amount of money which is being put by Chinese on the other side and Pakistanis on the other side, and the capability building which they are doing. We are still less than 2% of GDP today. We can do all kinds of optics and all kinds of excuses to say, no, we are doing this, we are doing that, all to that. But then the fact is, as very rightly somebody pointed out, we don't have a single SSBN. Without a single SSBN, do you think that we will be able to fight the other war? Similarly, important thing, let me put it, there have been so many seminars conducted on Russia-Ukraine war. I conduct the courses for staff college. Let me put it to you that even today, our river crossing drill is that we will take the boat, lower the boat, etc., and then cross the river, and that is how we will do a post river crossing. Let me tell you the kind of battlefield transparency exists. Before the Russian battalion hit the world, today the war happens. And if we have to do this exercise, the Indian battalion will also be handled accordingly. But this situation is a fact on ground. We need to change the truth. The fact is that in Kargil War, one of the major lesson was that this ratio of one target is to 3 fire units didn't work. So there were hundreds of fire units put there. The same thing happened and will happen in Russia-Ukraine war also. Wherein the only method subsequently Russians found was that you have to obliterate the other side of the river from total existence, and then only you can cross the river. Apparently, perhaps we need to learn this lesson if we have to deal in the developed terrain in the western border. Secondly, as far as Chinese are concerned, I've had enough discussions with a whole lot of Chinese. Let me tell you, they have totally assumed till now that India will not attack. We will start the operation, we will end the operation, India will only react. That's what General Cardozo was mentioning. This is there on their side. And we have to prove that it is wrong. Now, to prove that it is wrong, you have to have not only the offensive content, you have to show the offensive content in some manner. So therefore, I think there is a major restructuring and thinking which we need to go about it, because let me tell you, if Vietnam could defeat the America, France, as well as everybody else, and China, the only reason was that number one, I've studied these wars in great detail. The political and military leadership both were same, and by and large, whether it is Ho Chi Minh or it is General Chiap, they understood the political game as well as the military game together. And because they fought together, and this was the total synergy existed, they could defeat the best of the armies, irrespective of the asymmetry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think end of the time, it's sir. Any other points anybody has? All I'd like to say is that 25 years later, and today we're in the midst of what they call simultaneity as far as tipping points are concerned across the world. You've seen what's happening in Ukraine, Gaza, COVID, one after the other. And there is a changing character of war, which is also being demonstrated. At the same time, there's been a huge transformation that has taken place as far as the Indian Army's capability goes. But what has stood out in all this discussion today is that all this matters is that at the end, the important is of the human factor remains undiminished. And we've seen how the human factor stood out in various ways. So be it, large scale improvement as far as your munitions are concerned, as far as your surveillance is concerned, all that is, but finally, as General Puri also said, boots on ground matter. And as General said, artillery on ground has to follow boots on ground. So, I mean, these are things which are there. And all I can say is I've been indeed privileged and honored to have listened to the views of our esteemed panelists. And I thank them once again for sharing their valuable insights, as well as the audience for your wonderful participation today. Thank you. And now make a request the judges to kindly give award the honor participants today by giving a small token of remembrance.
Request you all to please join us for lunch.
Sir,